Okay, thank you. So like I was saying, I'm here with some of my colleagues. We have Dr. Njoki Mitugo. She's going to take us through the first session. We have Stephen Mushami. He's going to take us through the second session. We have Mr. John Karegwa, the Director, Strategia Netherlands. We have Mark Rabudi from Strategia Netherlands. And if you have any challenges concerning your audio and all that, kindly inbox the person who's the host, that is Online Resource Center, and they will be able to assist you. Thank you so much. So as a beginning, I'd like to say that Capacity Africa and Strategia Netherlands have partnered to bring this training to you. Capacity Africa is a training institute that offers both development, humanitarian, and business courses. So we welcome you to join us for more trainings. And this is just a series of trainings that we are going to host. We've had others. We've had project management trainings. We've had monitoring and evaluation. And we've also had grants management. So we are going to have this. And at the end of the session, we're going to provide the participants with the certificate. And we'll also send you the recordings of the same. So thank you so much for joining us. And at this moment, I think we are 11 minutes past the time. So I think it's good if we just begin. I'm going to introduce Debbie from Strategia Netherlands so that she can tell us one or two about Strategia Netherlands shortly, and then we can proceed. Debbie, if you can hear me.
Hello, good morning. Good morning. Sorry about that. I was having just a little bit of difficulty. Good morning to everybody, and thank you so much, Irene, for that wonderful introduction. I am Debbie Hazeler. I am the training manager for Strategia Netherlands, which is an international management training organization that provides capacity building services in health, development, safety, and security, and in humanitarian interventions. I would like to welcome all of you, and I really look forward to having you on our courses. We have trained over 10,000 staff in INGOs, and we have over 200 career-focused courses, and we really look forward to having you guys on board. Thank you so much. Thank you, Irene.
Okay, thank you, Debbie, for that. We are partnering with Strategia Netherlands to offer you these courses. So kindly remember to visit our websites, Capacity Africa and Strategia Netherlands, for more information. At this moment, kindly mute your microphones. Thank you. So at this moment, I think we can just kick it off. I'd like to introduce Mr. John Karegwa. He's going to talk about some key points to fundraising. He's just going to take a few minutes, and then we'll hand it over to Dr. Njoki Ndungu, and then we'll continue from there. So I hope Mr. John Karegwa can hear me.
I think before I go to presenting key points on proposal writing and fundraising, I would quickly like to just give a little background on fundraising. And I would say fundraising is the engine of every development organization. Without fundraising, development work cannot happen. And obviously, to sustain programs, organizations must enhance their skills and have capacity on fundraising and proposal writing, and equally equipping their staff with emerging and modern trends in proposal writing and fundraising. Often people ask, does fundraising pay? And I can say yes. In fact, the most sought after staff are people who raise money for organizations. And coming from the Netherlands, there are thousands of consultants here in the Netherlands and most of developed nations who raise money for organizations in the global south. So it's a well-paying profession. To be able to write successful proposals and raise funds sustainably, one needs to do the following. Have an understanding of the fundraising environment, such as knowing what the donors are looking to fund, Donors keep changing their areas, thematic areas. So you need to be in the know, have skills to develop competitive proposals. That's very, very important. Master different fundraising strategies. People tend to go the linear way of writing proposals, but there are other fundraising strategies, which we can discuss in another session. Have a clear fundraising plan for your organization so that it's within the strategy to raise resources as opposed to a one-off mechanism. Have an understanding of why proposals are denied funding. That's very, very important. So you are able to preempt and prepare. Initiate critical networks with our key players in development sector for the purpose of fundraising. Fundraising, and I'll talk about that in the other key points. You cannot be a lone ranger. You have to work with other partners. Of course, have capacity to defend proposals to the donors. You can write a very good proposal, but if you're not able to defend it, you could lose funding at that stage. Writing a proposal is about 50%. The other 50% is determined by a donor, and how you defend your proposal can determine whether you'll win the grant or lose. And then identify steps of approaching and maintaining effective relationships with donors for the purpose of future funding prospects. You need to maintain relationships with donors even before you're funded and after you're funded, so that it gives you the potential for the grant being renewed. Quickly, today, we're going to look at fundraising tips. We're also going to look at the components of proposal, which is actually the key theme of this training. We have project background, writing on the organizational background, problem statement, project planning, design, formulating a goal and SMART objectives, developing activities and work plan, writing about project management and monitoring and evaluation, risks and assumptions, expected outcomes and impact. Briefly, this might take a whole session on developing a log frame, but Steve Mushami will mention developing a project budget and enclosures before you submit a proposal. So thank you, and I'll quickly now go to my session on key points on fundraising. Before I do that, I would like to quickly mention that I worked with NGOs for about 15 years, and over 10 years, I was a fundraiser. So the points I'm sharing are built on my experiences as a fundraiser. And let's be honest, nothing is easy. So it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of networking. So the first 17 points are based on the environment in which NGOs work, and the last 5, 6 are actually based on you, the person, because unless you are determined to win the grant, the environment is not always conducive. So Nick, please, I'd like to share my screen. All right. Okay. The first point in my experience of fundraising is that fundraising has to be done as a continuous process. Just like marketing, fundraising must be done on continuous process. You do not write one proposal and sit back believing money will come. More often, you might receive a regret from a donor. So you have to keep identifying needs in your organization and developing proposals. So that's very, very important. The other key point is timing is also very important. Most donors have what you call rapid response funds for short projects, But the bigger projects, you have to start at a certain time. Maybe they have calls for proposals happening every once in a year, through which they then pick the proposals to fund for the next 3 years. So it's very, very important that you apply for the grant at the timing that is advertised by the organization. Okay. The second point, from my experience with fundraising, is fundraising skills in an organization is a must for an organization to sustain its programs. You find a number of organizations depend on the director to write proposals, or a project manager or a project director. It's important that more than one staff have skills to write proposals in an organization, and where possible, create a fundraising committee in an organization that keeps identifying gaps in your projects, or designate a fundraising officer whose job is purely to identify needs and raise money, so that everybody knows this is the person who raises money in an organization. Without that, you expect a number of challenges when funding suddenly ends after a grant, and jobs are cut. So it's important that we invest in fundraising skills, so that more people in an organization can raise money and sustain the organization. Another point I've learned from my experience is you cannot work as a lone ranger in fundraising. So you need to network with other organizations. It helps in accessing funding sources on both local and international levels. You get to know information in terms of which donor has funding, the trends, what is being funded. Right now, there's a lot of funding in COVID, COVID-19. Less is being talked about malaria, HIV, AIDS, TB, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the trends that people need to understand. Which donor has money, and when does the money start and end? And what are the standards expected, or ideas that are being promoted? Right now, of course, there's also a lot of funding for climate change, innovations, IT, and so on and so forth. So you need to be at par with the trends of the day. The other most important thing is performance and credibility in fundraising. Perform, implement, and account timely report for the funds given to your organization. Performance and credibility attracts more funding. Poor performance denies you funding in the future. What that means is you must follow the contract agreed with you and the donor. If you go out of the work plan and the contract, and word goes out that you have been blacklisted, then you lose more funding, because donors talk. Development partners have meetings, and they share stories and the experiences. So you get blacklisted, you are out of business. So it's very, very important that you implement your programs according to the letter. The other most important thing that I've learned is to succeed in fundraising, ensure your organization and its managers are visible in workshops, websites, networks, media, and conferences. Just like a business, create a brand about your organization and your work, and you'll attract more funds. Basically operate like a business, and businesses compete. So as development organizations, we also compete for funding and for opportunities. So make yourself visible. Nobody will give money to strangers. Donors like to talk about organizations and who is doing the good work. So if you're not known, you cannot attract money. So make it a policy to let your work be known. Sometimes you'll do a story in the newspaper or on TV about your work, and some donor picks up the story, and the next day you're being called and asked, can you submit a proposal? Or, we would like to understand your programs better so we can give you funding in the future. So please invest in making yourself visible as much as possible. The other point is local fundraising is very, very competitive and very unpredictable. From my experience, sometimes we'd have, when I was fundraising in Kenya, I would have a call for proposal, say for Global Fund, or for some funding for civic education from UNDP. And you find they receive about 2,000 proposals, and they can only fund, say, 30 organizations or 20 organizations. That means 750 organizations cannot be funded. So to be able to maneuver some of these competitions, it's good to go international and source for partners who do not have a lot of competition. Um, and some of those opportunities can be found in online directories. You can go to crowdfunding platforms where you're able to raise your cause, and potential donor might be interested in your proposal, uh, without competition. So try to go international as much as possible. That's where the money is. For the local funding, and this is without bias, we have noticed major donors like to work with major organizations. So for the small organizations, it becomes a big challenge to access major funds. So it's very, very important then you reach out to other forums globally. Point 7, from my experience, donors want credit for their money. Most donors don't give money because they care about your problems, unfortunately. Some of it is given out just as to win publicity for political or economic reasons. Some of the, especially development partners, USAID, UK aid, Dutch fund, or so on and so forth, for political reasons. So they kind of compete among themselves. And the only way they can continue working with you is if you give credit to their grant. And this can be done in through reports, conferences, acknowledging their supporting conferences, newspapers, social media, television news, thank you notes. So don't just receive the money and pretend that you're very, very busy implementing and you do not acknowledge their support. It's very, very important because they also want to show other competing partners that they have put a grant on climate change or on this and that or on COVID and so on and so forth. So try to give credit to their donors as much as possible. Fundraising strategy. Lots of organizations, I mentioned earlier, think in a linear way that the only way to raise money is to write a proposal and seek for a grant. But there are many strategies that you can use to raise money, to keep the money coming. If you look at some of the some organizations such as AMREF, CARE, World Vision, and so on and so forth, they write proposals to donors, but they also have other fundraising mechanisms throughout the world. You find, for example, there's AMREF in Italy, there's AMREF in the Netherlands, there's AMREF in Australia. And the purpose of those branches is basically for fundraising. So ensure that you have a mechanism to have people who raise money for you. Maybe they are trustees or international volunteers who organize golf tournament or a walk or whatever, so that keeps your money coming in, so you don't have to depend on one stream. In fact, private donors are actually more reliable, because even if a private donor, someone running a foundation, decides to stick with your program, you can count on funding coming through for another 5 or 10 years, or eternally, as opposed to writing a grant year after year, and the funding runs out. I know of an organization that had employed about 200 people, and one day the funding was terminated, and all those 200 people were rendered jobless. So diversify your fundraising strategies, and you are in you can sustain your programs. Innovations, from my experience, again, Donors are always looking out for innovative ideas to solve problems. So find innovative solutions to development challenges, not writing proposals to conduct another workshop after another workshop. And this is accusation that most organizations have. Uh, every other person you're meeting, we receive some of these requests, unfortunately, from partners in Africa or Asia, telling you about, I have this children's home and I'm looking for your partnership. I always see children's homes after another. So there's a way, of course, you can run a children's home, but also have some innovative approach to addressing the challenges of children. So innovation is very, very important. Create a WASH or poverty eradication solution. The ideas, for example, in circular economy, innovative ideas for climate change, use of ICTs, innovative skills for skill building as opposed to having another seminar after another seminar. So crack your head and think innovation, and you will sustain your organization with more monies from more donors. From my experience again, because of just what I've mentioned, when an organization has to send home 10 members of staff or 20 or 30 because the funding is over, you can have a Lifeline if you have more than one source of funding at any one time. That's very, very important. It allows sustainability and makes the organization stable. One source of funding is always a big risk because you never know if the donor might decide to change priority. Say, for example, now we have a new president in the United States. If the programs funded by Donald Trump do not interest Joe Biden's government, they will stop funding for Africa or for Asia or for South America. So when you have more partners with more projects, you are in a strength as opposed to only having one development partner. The media, like I've mentioned before, can boost funding opportunities, work with the media as much as possible. And one of the successful stories I can share of how working with the media can pay off is you always find a UNICEF, CARE, World Vision, they're ever on CNN. Or if you go to a social media page of UNICEF, you'll be amazed by the millions of the likes that they have. So you need to work like a business, make yourself visible. You find humanitarian organizations, serious ones, even have a media department, have a PR department or communication department that shares their stories. And that in itself is actually to attract more money. So the money goes to those who are known, who have beautiful stories. Even in your own small way, if you're running a community organization, you can still, for example, document that in social media, get a local reporter to write your story. You never know who is reading, that story to be able to attract money. It may not be your core business, but trust me, it works. Many years ago, when we were running some youth programs, we would invite the donor to a show on TV. And they'll talk about the funding they are giving Kenya. For example, USAID, you invite the director to appear on a TV show, and he probably shares that recording with his bosses in New York. And you can be sure you become friends, and money will keep flowing to your organization when other people are struggling. Of course, again, from my experience, donors like to fund urgent and priority needs, and the most likely programs to be funded are those small projects. Also depending on your capacity, programs which are sustainable. Sustainability is the key aspect in most projects. High impact, innovative, I've mentioned, low budgeted, and for the most urgent and pressing need as much as possible. Right now, I've mentioned every other organization, the priority right now is COVID. If you can come up with an innovative ways of distribution of or manufacturing of ventilators or manufacturing and distribution of masks sanitizers, better awareness strategies, because the strategies in the market are not working. You will be having money, and so always be prepared to respond to a need if you need to, even if that's not your core line of development agenda. It's always good to be prepared to address emerging needs, and money will keep flowing to your organization. Capacity, like I've mentioned earlier, the capacity for the organization to absorb and optimally utilize the donor funds is a must. You must have a track record, experience showing what projects you've done. You have qualified staff. Do you have a sense of community ownership? Do you have a strategic plan? Some donors actually ask for all this. Do you have infrastructure, or you just have, you're a one-man NGO, you are the director, accountant, project manager, project officer? Well, not to scare small organizations, but especially when you're dealing with a big grant, they will do something called capacity assessment, where they can decide to qualify you or disqualify you. So always be prepared to have all those capacity aspects. If you do not have capacity, especially if you're a new organization, you can work in synergy with an experienced organization, and that can strengthen your capacity, so that the experience of the other organization, you're able to share that as your experience in the future fundraising aspect. So that is key. So don't work alone if you don't have a clear capacity. Also, we all like money, and a lot of money, but a donor will look at you have applied for $1 million, but you have never managed $10,000, because they look at that as a lack of capacity, and you lose the grant because you are ambitious. So it's good to work within your strengths and capacities, as much as possible, unless this donor is your friend and wants to help you build your organization. Well, there are special groups that attract money. Of course, women, disabled, grandmothers, orphans, refugees, pastoralists, sex workers, youth, children, and other marginalized communities have higher chances of attracting, donor funds. That does not rule out that you cannot get funding to train civil servants, teachers, and so on and so forth. But there's always funding for marginalized groups in communities. Sex workers, LGB right now is also attracting a lot of funding because it's considered, high risk or marginalized group, and so on and so forth. So think in terms of the pressing need, and for the most marginalized groups, there's always something for them. Community ownership, not in all the cases, but most donors want to see the contribution of the community in the project and how the community has been involved. So if once you have researched your donor and you know that's what the donor is looking for, so then ensure that the community is involved and the community contributes to the project. Synergy proposals have bigger weight than single applications. So if the community is contributing to the success of the proposal and it's a requirement by the donor, then so be it. And so ensure that is done. The other point is very, very important is, and we've experienced this with, say, donors terminating a program for whatever reason, it could be personal, or maybe they're not happy with the implementation, or it could be political. I've talked about a political shift, or economic. Right now, I'm sure there's going to be less money because of the impact of COVID to different countries. So most development partners might actually be cutting funding, and they could actually cut funding for an ongoing project. So the donor is always right. So it's very, very important that you have a relationship with your donor, understand the donor, and also understand the contract and the rules of engagement before touching money. Sometimes before a grant, once you sign the grant, most people are desperate to get to work, and they don't even read the contract. They only look at the money which has hit the account, and then you realize you are not following the budget, and then you are in problems. So get to understand your donor, get to understand the contract before touching the money. And also, one-off grants are good, and they're also bad. One-off grants are good because they can be seed money to, and I know organizations like Ford Foundation, Rockefeller can give you, a one-off grant if you have an innovative idea, a seed money to help you, design future interventions. But they can also be bad because if you do not get more funding, then the organization is threatened. So it's good to learn all these dynamics, as you set up your journey for fundraising. The next few points are related to the fundraiser, because I know most people want money, but they don't want to put an extra mile. So from my experience, what I've learned is to become a successful fundraiser, you need to learn how to write well and analyze ideas. Successful fundraising is an art for those who love to read, think, write, and analyze things. You can set on a journey in the field, and you see a problem that needs intervention. But if you don't have an eye for seeing things and analyze things from a problematic, from intervention perspective, you lose out on many opportunities. So I would say thinking is actually the hardest part. Writing is easier. So you need to have an open mind. The way a journalist goes to the field and is supposed to come with a story for the editor, that's the way I think we are supposed to be as development workers. Always have an open mind and always look out for solutions, especially even from the communities themselves. There are always ideas coming up. And so that's about you to have an open mind, to think, analyze, and then write those ideas well for the donor. And the best part is sometimes you can come up with an idea even before you develop the proposal. Share the idea with the donor and say, I have gone to the field and I've come up with, I've seen this idea. Do you think this is something which could interest the organization? We call it, you can develop a concept note or concept paper and share. And you never know, the donor might get interested, share with their colleagues, and then ask you, can you now develop a full proposal, and would be interested in looking at it. So these are some of the ways for fundraising. Don't write a full proposal unless you've been asked to. Write concept notes on how to address the problem of drugs, to address the problem of farming, agribusiness, and so on and so forth. Share with a potential donor if that's their line of development agenda. And if they like the idea, they'll ask you to prepare a detailed proposal. But just like I've mentioned, looking out for information is very, very important. Have your ears on the ground all the time to know which funding is available. And there are lots of resources are online. You can secure funding in seconds, but you have to be patient and to research well, seek information as much as possible. If you come across, a donor directory funding, say, agribusiness or youth programs, you can write 2 to 3 paragraphs to as many of them via email. And most of them will respond, saying, this is what I propose to do. Would you be having funding for this intervention? And more often, they'll actually send you an application form, to apply for the funding, maybe for the next intake, and so on and so forth. So have an open mind, seek information on what funding is available and the trends, and so on and so forth. Like I've said earlier, it's not hard work that pays, it's working smart. Do research well, and you'll win big grants. Sometimes people get surprised when you have an organization that always has big funding, And it's because they invest in fundraising. Either they hire consultants to raise money for them, or they have staff who have a lot of experience in fundraising. I think my perspective is to work like a business, where a business is always looking for new markets. So you have to have your toes on the ground all the time, looking for those opportunities. One of the other ways I have found you can raise small grants is through what we call crowdfunding. And there are lots of crowdfunding, platforms where you can post your idea or your proposal, and people start contributing to the cause. There are platforms, say, in the US or in UK, where someone says he has a children's home in Uganda, and they would like to raise some money, and people contribute, and you show what you've done previously, put pictures of some African children, miserable African children, and you raise a lot of money. And that's in fact, my perspective in fundraising in Europe is actually a business, because some of those organizations raise money for Asia or for South America, and only a small percentage goes to Africa or to Asia. The rest of the money stays in Europe. So, work like a business. But the challenge with many of our organizations, unfortunately, is we want money, but we don't want to sweat for it. We also work with businesses. They want money for business, but they don't want to write a business plan or to write good business plans. So if you want money, invest in fundraising and in writing good proposals, and money will come. My other strategy is breaking the rules. You don't have to go the linear way. Try to be different innovations. Be the competition by finding the donor nobody knows about. 10 years ago, I came across a donor based in Singapore, and we're able to secure about $10,000. Who would have thought that there are donors in Singapore? Who would have thought that there are donors in China? Who would have thought? Everybody thinks about Europe and America, but there are donors in every part of the world. There are donors in Japan. So go online, check out the donors in Japan, go check out the donors in Malaysia, those development nations, Asian tigers, and the money is yours. So try to go east, and stop thinking always in one direction of Europe and North America. Everybody goes there. So break the rules and find partners who have not been found. Of course, this goes again around in terms of what I'm saying. Do you want to raise money? You must master the sector. And mastering the sector, and also from my experience, is understanding the politics and operations of the development sector in your country or in the region or in the world. There are lots of politics in development sector. You find, and this again, with all due respect, is people who work, for example, in human rights, for example, in Uganda, in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Kenya, in Somalia, in Kazakhstan, wherever. They always like to keep the money within themselves, within the human rights sector network. So if you are a newcomer, they will not allow you to access the money. People who are addressing reproductive health, AMREF and a PSI, and lots of others, John Hopkins, always operate like cartels among themselves. So you need to understand those dynamics. Otherwise, you'll apply for funding, and if you're not known, you'll never go through. Better start your own niche slowly, and you'll find those big organizations actually now looking for you. So it's very, very important that you know those dynamics, those politics, because the players in the sector always want to work with the people they know. They are the ones who, the big boys and the big girls, they're the ones who tell the donors who to fund. They're the ones who make referral in terms of who you are and what you are not. So, so get to understand the dynamics of fundraising, so that then you can play by the rules, or play by your own rules, if you like. I've also learned, and this is also from my experience, that when we were training others in fundraising, you learn so much. Is by training others. So, for example, if you are to share experiences about fundraising, you learn much more from other people. Of course, right now I know meetings and trainings are not possible because of COVID. But when you share your experiences without, and other people are sharing the experiences in terms of the challenges they go through, you also learn so much. And in the process, you could all decide to come together and do a synergy project. But when you sit alone, you think you can write 1,000 proposals and nobody will come to your aid. If you, for example, you approached UNIFEM, UN Women, with an intervention, say affecting, women in South Africa or in Nigeria, and say you have mobilized women organizations to do ABC, form a synergy proposal, and these are the expected results, they'll give you a hearing. But if you do the same proposal alone, as a lone ranger, it might just be ignored. But if you look for a synergy to do an intervention, you have the chances of getting considered. So it's very important to work with others as part of this fundraising journey. Again, and I have to repeat this: fundraising is about relationships. Effective fundraising is all about building relationships. Start with who do we know, and how, if they don't know me, how do I entice myself to the potential funder? And it could start with a small story, and sending some photos, or tagging them on Twitter, on Instagram or Facebook, and so on and so forth. So that then they get to know your work, and they get to know you. So cultivate relationships as much as possible by thanking, recognition, sharing information. Invite, even if the donor has not given you money and you have an event, please invite the director of USAID or the country representative or UNFPA in their region to come and open a workshop. And you will never be able to get an appointment to meet the country director of a UNFPA or UNAIDS. But if you have an event and you keep inviting them, you'll be at a high table where he's going to ask you, or she's going to ask you, so tell me about your project. Where did you start? What are you doing? And you never know. By the time the workshop is over, the meeting is over, you already have a grant. And even if they don't give a grant, they quickly provide solutions, because they're in a network of other funders, and they'll say, oh, I went to the workshop where I learned about this program, and I would like to share their profile in case you're a small grant for them, and so on and so forth. So these are all the ideas that we tried, and they worked to our advantage. One of the other ways to sustain fundraising is whether it's within the organization or the level of the board. You can create a fundraising committee, such as inviting 5, 10 prominent people in your area and who are known to form a fundraising committee. I know lots of when COVID broke in many countries, especially in third world countries, the governments of the areas of those countries have formed fundraising committees made of prominent business people, influential personalities, and so on and so forth. And they were able to raise a lot of money for those interventions. So, even having a profile of prominent people in your board or in any association can give credibility to your fundraising efforts. So think about that, variety of skills, writing letters and proposals, designing beautiful presentations, organizing activities, asking for donations online, online webinars, for example. You could right now, everybody's gone online. You could invite prominent people to participate in a webinar on fundraising for COVID in your area, or for children's needs affected by COVID, and so on and so forth, or for old people affected by COVID. And in the process of you moderating the session, you'll actually, people think very fast. Influential people think very fast. They come up with solutions, and you have money. Someone might actually ask you to come for a check the following day, or they might want more information, which then you have to prepare and present. So these are some of the ideas away from thinking the linear way in your efforts to fundraise. Most of us receive the money and walk away, believing that it's your money. It's not your money. So when you receive the grant, please send a thank you note within 22 hours, and and you can the many ways of doing that. You can send an email. You can send a certificate to the donor to thank them for the funding, and keep them well informed. Some people, organizations receive money, and they don't get back to the donor until there's a problem. That's when the donor is looking for them, because when they say, oh, we are very busy implementing, you have to keep the donor informed and updated whether they ask for it or not. That builds a relationship and shows that you can be trusted. So, prepare reports even before you've been asked to prepare. If you have to submit reports every month or every quarter, don't wait until the donor has asked why you have not submitted the report. So make a thank you as part of your business. Finally, if you believe you raise money, you raise money. It's about you. Where there is will, there is way. It's your self-determination to raise funds that will raise great funds for your project. At the end of the day, it all depends on you. If you believe, you will win. If you don't believe, you won't raise any money. So thank you very much. That was a pace setter, just to kind of brainstorm. And I would now like to invite Dr. Njoki Mituga to take us through the first session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I like the way John shares, because he's not actually looking at the academic perspective, but he's talking from experience. Well, he has worked in the NGO world, so he knows what works and what doesn't work. And I think this is what we need. Before I go into my presentation, maybe I'll just ask one or two people to share their experience in fundraising, the flows, the failures. Just raise up your hand and just share shortly, just 2 minutes, your experience in fundraising. Anyone? Yes, Teresa, just unmute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Titma. I'm from UNEP, Mongolia. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. You go ahead.
So, as a international development organization, we are working. We always work on the fundraising for women and reproductive health, and also pregnant women in Mongolia. So, in last 12 years, we continued working with the government of the Luxembourg for maternal and newborn health in Mongolia. So the first project was covered by 6 provinces, but the successful implementation of our project, we continued continued the fundraising from the Luxembourg in 3 phases. So I totally agree with the presentation, the professor's presentation, and the successful implementation always give the credibility of our organization, and we are still working with the government of Luxembourg even in the COVID pandemics. So they believe in Uniform Mongolia, and they believe in our staff capacity. So that's why we are still working with them for last 14 years with 1 donors.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best. And it's good that you are able to appreciate what the key concept of the key tips that Mr. Karego has shared, and you've seen what works and what doesn't work. So thank you so much. So without wasting time, I would like us to go into the reasons for proposal decline, because you write a proposal and you don't get the response that you expected, or it is declined. So it is important from the tips that Mr. Karego has given us. Let's see what makes a donor decline or reject our request. And I would like to talk from the donor's perspective. Sorry, I did not do an introduction. My name's Dr. Njoki Metugo. My background is community psychology and economics, and also in project management. I've been a trainer. I've worked with the NGOs, both national and international NGOs. So my training or my work with you is through experience. Welcome. So one of the reasons that can make a donor decline from their point of view is that you do not meet their priorities. So it is always good to research the donor before you apply. Something else that can make the donor decline is the organization is not located in the donor's geographical area. So when you're doing your research, you need to know the scope, their coverage, and what else they fund. So get the guidelines before applying. At least check the grants guide. It's always given by the donor. You can get that from their website, or you can call them. Another reason is that the proposed budget and grant request is not within the donor's funding range. Research the donor. So look at the average size of a grant of the funder or the donor. How much are they offering? How much do they give for a particular project? The other thing, and this Mr. Moshiri has mentioned, is that the donor may feel that they don't know you, they don't know this organization, and they're wondering whether you're credible. So what do? Set up an interview before submitting the proposal and have board members and other funded organizations give you credibility. And this is what he mentioned, networking. You have to network. The proposal doesn't seem urgent, and I'm not sure it will have an impact. This is the feeling of the donor. So study the priorities and have a skilled writer do this section to make it grab the funder. This is what he has mentioned about engaging a professional in proposal writing. In short, so the objective and plan of action of the project greatly exceed the budget and the timelines for implementation. So it's good to be realistic about the programs and the budget. So you have to be a hands-on person. You need to understand exactly what you're working with and make it real. Another reason is that there is insufficient evidence that the program will become self-sufficient and sustain itself after the grant is completed. So always have an exit plan. An exit plan. You have to show the donor that the project will be sustainable. The community that where you're implementing the project will be able to carry on with the project. Another reason could be the proposal does not follow the prescribed format. So read the application information very carefully and follow it Exactly. Sometimes you may feel like something that the donor is requesting maybe to you may seem irrelevant, but just follow the format, just follow the donor. It is the donor who is giving the money, so you have to follow every instruction that is given. So the proposal may be poorly written and difficult to understand. So that's why you have friends and experienced people critique the grant or the proposal. So make sure that you understand. So in short, very fast. So the description of the solution and the budget have to match. The management summary has to be good enough. You have to explain who you are, your management system, because you are introducing yourself maybe for the first time. And then make sure that the information you're giving is complete. It's about the project, the problem statement, the information background, the executive summary. Every information has to be complete. If there is poor understanding of the current situation and needs, so you have to show the donor that you are hands-on, you understand the situation, you understand the needs. There is a need analysis that has been done and you understand it. Then if your project plan is not clear, if you do not have enough information about the delivery team, that is the implementers, that is your team. If the information is not enough, their qualification, their experience, the donor might reject that. Then, if the donor does not see a detailed report on how they will benefit, so it's always good to show the donor how they will benefit. If the risk and mitigations are not set out properly, the donor might reject that. If the information about the references is not authentic, so make sure that every information you're giving has been, it's clear. It is a hands-on information, it's authentic. The poor qualification of benefits, lack of competitive differentiation, and too much generic text. So talk from experience. So let's move on to the component of a proposal document. We know that a proposal is one of the ways of raising funds for an NGO or for a project. And actually it is the main, it is the main activity in fundraising. So what are the components of a proposal document? We have the executive summary, the organization description, the project background. We've got to have the problem statement, the goals and objectives, beneficiaries, where are you implementing the project, the proposed methodology, the budget. You have to have the monitoring and evaluation component, then the exit plan. And then you can have the annexes. So very quickly, we go through each component of the proposal document. The first one is the executive summary. In the executive summary, you've got to show what you propose to do, where, why, and for who, and with who. Do you have partners? And for how long? That is the timeline. And the executive summary is normally one page, summarizing the project, summarizing who you are, summarizing the scope of operation. And then in the executive summary, you have to show why it is important. Sorry. The executive summary is important because it is the first part that is read, because it is in the first page of your proposal. Sometimes it is the only part that is read, because it gives a clear summary of the project. It can be used by the donor to communicate to others about your project. So you have to make sure that you capture the donor with the executive summary, because from there, they can be able to network you. The organization background, that is the presentation of the organization. Why is it important? It is because it establishes credibility and image of a well-managed organization. That means critical need in the work, in the area of work. So you are actually introducing yourself. Who are you? How are you? What qualifications do you have? Do you have any experience? Who are your employees? Are they credible? It should not be too long. If you're approaching a new donor, attach in appendix an organizational brochure and the last annual report. Very important, so that now the donor can understand exactly who you are. The way you present your organization will determine whether you'll be called in by the donor to defend your proposal. The other component of the proposal is the project background. The content, it is who took the initiative. Does the project fit into an existing development plan or program? Is this the first phase of the project, or is it a continuous of an activity that is already started? And if it is a continuing activity, what have been the main results of the previous phase? What studies have been done to prepare the project? This is the needs analysis. Who else operates in this field? They are implementing partners. The problem statement is the other paragraph. And why is it important to give the project statement? So unless the donors are convinced that there is a real problem, they will not agree to pay for your project. So you have to convince the donor that this is a project, this is a problem. Maybe it is an emergency, or maybe it's something that has been missing in the community, and you have the intervention project, concept. So a good problem should concern the people, be concrete and demonstrated, and it should be solvable, and it should come from a demand. You have to show that that community cannot operate without your intervention. It is important. The other component of a proposal are the goals and the objective. And it is very important to be clear about the goal and the objectives. Sorry. So we said that the goal is the overall objective. That is the main purpose. That is what you are trying to achieve. So describe the long-term goal of your project. Describe the long-term goals your project will contribute to, and then describe the project purpose or specific objectives. Describe the objective of your project in response to the core problem, and also state the expected results. Describe the outputs or outcomes and the concrete results of your project. Fundamental. We said that the objectives should be SMART. They should be specific, exact. They must meet the needs of the problem identified. They must be measurable. They should be measured by concrete indicators, which should reflect the extent to which they have been attained. It should be acceptable by all involved partners, the donors, the community, the other implementing partners. They should be relevant. They must be adequate to the project, socio-cultural environment. They should be timely. must be reached by the end of the project, unless something has happened that has interfered with your work plan. The objective should be met as per the project plan. The other component is the proposed methodology. The proposed methodology contains the partners who you're planning, if there are any, you're planning to implement the project with, the project implementation, the do's, the activities. It is always good to state the risks and the assumptions and the means. And why is it important to show the methodology? It shows how the objectives will be achieved. For example, if you're talking about training, how many persons are you planning to train and for how long, starting when, which method will be used? Is it seminars? Is it in-house training, ad hoc courses, etc.? And then explain why the training is necessary. And then which new skills will be the trainees acquire? What are you trying to achieve? Still in the proposed methodology, state the risk and the assumption. And I know the next trainer will take you through the logical framework so that you can understand the risks and the assumption. And you say that the risks are the external factors that could potentially jeopardize your project and are beyond your control. For example, if you want to implement your project in an electioning year in your country, what does that mean? Will it affect your project? What happens after an election, or what happens during the campaign time? So you can state that as a risk. The assumptions are the things you are expecting to be in a certain way. And then why is it important to state the risk and the assumptions? It helps to assess the factors which could jeopardize your project and keep them in mind and record. It helps in examining the project for completeness and consistency. The other component is the budget. Very important. What are the contents of the budget? It is good to do the budget on a spreadsheet. It's always good to give budget explanation and justification. You just don't just post the amount. You have to justify why you need money for that or why you are allocating money for that particular budget item. It's always good to prepare your budget using your action plan. Please don't inflate the budget. Go as per the market price. If you're talking about purchasing a vehicle, don't inflate that. Use the current market prices. Be careful to follow the donor's requirement. So in your budget, don't add anything that the donor does not fund. Most donors normally give a list of the items that they fund, also the activities they fund. So be careful to follow their requirements. Another component of a proposal document is a monitoring and evaluation. And why is it important? Monitoring is important to assess whether your project activities are on track. So you're monitoring, you're assessing, you're following your project through records. Sorry. Evaluation, you are evaluating to assess whether your project is effective. So you're looking at the indicators, efficient and has an impact. You're also checking whether it is relevant and whether it is sustainable. What are the content of a monitoring and evaluation? You have to identify what will be monitored and why. And then you have to indicate by whom. Is it the donor? Is it the government? Is it you? Is it the community? Is it an independent M&E personnel? And then you have to say how often. Is it midterm or at the end of the project? Is it quarterly? Is it after every fortnight? So you've got to indicate how often. And then you have to indicate which tool you'll be using. This is in project communication. And I know this week we'll give more details when you start training in project management. We'll talk about the project communication and the project management tools. Sustainability is fundamental. You cannot write a proposal or you cannot design a project without sustainability, without your exit plan, because with the project actually have a lifespan. You can have a three-month project, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years, but it will have to come to an end. So it is good to show its sustainability. The donor would like to know whether the money they have invested has value. So in the sustainability, it's good to show the institutional sustainability, that even after implementing that project, you're not closing up and going home, just so how you're going to exit and continue. The technical sustainability, whatever technical information or technical equipment you have implemented or you have given into that community, is the community able to sustain it? Are you handing it over to the community? Are you handing it over to the government? And then the social and cultural sustainability, then the financial sustainability. And we've said it is important because donors want to be sure that the investment will not be lost at the end of the project, and that you are already planning the phasing out of the project. The annexes, and I know my colleague will talk more on the annexes, but just an overview. You can have the glossary, the maps, statistics, that is the policy document, proof of registration and tax benefits for donor, financial statements, mostly for 3 years, the last 3 years, composition of a board of directors, this is the management of your organization, list of major donors. If you have, some donors want to look at how accountable you are, and they want to see your experience. So it is good to list the major donors if you have any. Annual report, fundamental. Donors are not very keen on funding new projects or new organization. So it is good to have an annual report. And if you're new, look for partnerships, engage others so that now you can work with their experience. You can attach the specific studies or evaluation reports. Maybe if you have MOUs, it is good to attach them. Letters of support to show your credibility. If you have pictures showing your case studies, they're important. We say that pictures speak a lot about who you are. And any other document you feel it is relevant to your project and to your proposal. Maybe I can pause for 2 minutes for any reaction. Maybe somebody with a burning question before we continue to the writing the organizational background.
Hello, Madam Joki, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You skipped the beneficiaries part. I think it was number 6 or something. You didn't mention maybe about it. If you could just mention a few points about it.
The beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are the. I'm giving an overview, but it's good to mention because my colleague I know will get into details on the budgeting. But beneficiaries, you are showing who are the community where you are implementing the project. It is part of the logical framework. Have I answered you?
Yes, thank you.
So let's proceed to how do you write the organizational background? It's fundamental. Who are you? When I say I'm Njoki, who is Njoki? How will people who have never met me know who I am? How will I win them? So this is the organizational background. So, and we say that a well-written organizational background section can help propel your grant application to success, the way you introduce yourself. On the other hand, an ineffective organizational background section can deter funding groups from giving your application full consideration. So if you don't present yourself well, you may miss out. So an effective organizational background statement should be concise while painting a compelling picture of your organization, its history, and its mission. Explaining exactly who you are, because the donor has to trust you. The donor has to have a picture of you before they meet you. It sets the stage for the rest of your grant application by drawing a clear connection between your organization's mission and experience to the funding your organization is seeking. Who are you? And then the person you are approaching, are they related or are they connected with your activities? So what are the steps to writing an organizational background? The first step is to write in the beginning of the organizational background a section, a description of the mission of the organization in 1 or 2 sentences. When you were registered, when do you, how did you start? And then identify your organization's constituents and services. Include your organization's long-term goals, as well as what achieving these goals makes possible on a larger scale. The step 2, explain the history of your organization and how it took to reach its current design. Please note, an exhaustive history is not necessary. Just give a brief paragraph of 5 to 7 sentences. That is enough. You don't have to give a whole history, but just a few sentences, but very concise, very precise. Identify the major points of change or expansion. Include key people and relationships, as well as specific metrics that can give the reader an idea of your organization's performance. Your credibility. Step number 3, detail the programs that your organizations operate in short bullet points. Bullet points are very easy to understand and they capture the attention of the reader. Show how your organization achieves its mission on a day-to-day basis. Provide your organization specific benchmarks and accomplishments when possible. Step number 4, tie together your organization and the funding you're seeking in a final paragraph. That shows relevancy. Point to any program that highlights experience related to the kind of project that the prospective funding would support. Show a funding organization how its financial support will promote your organization's mission and benefit the community. Because it is not the organization that is being given money per se, but it is the project, it is the community, the beneficiaries are the ones that you're receiving funding on behalf. Yours is an intervention or an intervention agent. I don't know why my computer keep misbehaving. Project planning and design. So we say that project planning is a form of operational planning whereby the consecutive steps to implement the project activities are carefully mapped out. based on an analysis of relevant information and linked to the program in which the project takes place and to which it should contribute. Project planning involves establishing the scope, aims at objectives of the project, the way in which the project will be performed, the roles and responsibilities of those involved, and the time and cost estimates. It also answers the questions such as, what are the project objectives, or what are you aiming at? What will be done to reach the project objectives? Those are the activities. How will it be done? The methodology. Who will do it? And then, when will it be done? Project design. Project design is the crucial stage in a project lifecycle because it identifies key elements by outlining the answers to the 4 W's of the project. In project communication, we talk about the what, the where, the when, and the who. The what defines the project itself. The where is the internal and external environment, that is the scope. When, the time frames, the timelines. Who, the beneficiaries. So when you're designing a project, you have to have those 4 W's in mind: the what, the where, the when, and the who. What are the elements of the project design and planning? The project design and planning elements. One of them is project background. This describes the history of how you developed the idea for your project and the status quo that you want to change. This is why you explain exactly why your project should take place in your community or whichever community you're working with, and what the problem is you aim to solve. The project, it also contains the project context. This is the description of the internal and external environment where the project is going to be undertaken and the effect of the environment on the project. The environment includes the risks and the opportunities. In the project contents, you do the SWOT analysis. The risks and the assumptions. You have to take risks and assumptions into account when planning your project, as they might change the entire setup. If the event actually occurs, they might even end your entire project. Another element are the goals and the objective. Project goals and objectives are similar in that they are both the reason as to why the project needs to take place. The goal gives the direction to the project. The objectives are the specific targets the project aims to achieve to meet the goal. The objectives are like the pathway towards your aim. Another element are the outputs and the outcomes. Both outputs and outcomes are direct results from a project. Many NGOs focus on outputs because they are easier to measure. However, the evaluating outcomes should be emphasized, and these are the direct changes in the lives of the beneficiaries that are the most important. Beneficiaries and stakeholders. Every project is designed for the beneficiaries. The project beneficiaries are the people whom circumstances you want to change by implementing your idea. They are also called the target groups or the target beneficiaries of your project. Activities. Project activities are actions undertaken by the project to achieve the set objectives. Activities are typically designed according to the project strategy. Timelines. Timeline basically shows A timeline is not a detailed work plan, but a quick way to present an overview of your planned activities. A work plan is a description of the sequence of the project activities in time. It is much more detailed than a mere timeline, though. It includes the information about responsibilities, objectives, and sometimes even the budget. And this will be explained in details in the next session when my colleague will be taking you through the logical framework. Budget estimates. A budget is an estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time. Project budget simply refers to a document which specifies how much money needs to be allocated and how it will be allocated and how the allocated money will be implemented on the activities to achieve the goal of the project. Sustainability or the exit plan. Sustainability is the ability of an organization to continue its mission or program far into the future. All projects have to end eventually, but the project impact should continue. Monitoring and evaluation strategies. See that monitoring and evaluation strategies is an approach that has mainly been developed to measure, underline measure, and assess the success of performance of projects, programs, or the entire organization. So monitoring is just measuring and assessing the success or the failure of the project. I want to continue and then we'll have a question and answer session. So how do you write a problem statement? The definition of a problem statement. A problem statement is usually 1 or 2 sentences to explain the problem your process improvement project will address. In general, a problem statement will outline the negative points of the current situation and explain why it matters. It also serves as a great communication tool, helping to get a buy-in and support from others, and especially from the donor. Why should we have a problem statement? One of the most important goals of any problem statement is to define the problem being addressed in a way that is clear and precise. It aims to focus the process improvement team's activities and steer the scope of the project. A project, we say, is defined as an intervention. So the problem statement explains clearly the process, or it creates a way of your intervention. If you're talking about a project that is geared towards stopping the FGM, you have to explain the dangers that have been posed by FGM in that particular community. That is what will create a way to your project intervention, or to your intervention, for your intervention. How do you write a project? A problem statement. So explain the problem and state why it matters. Number 2, describe how things should work. Number 3, explain your problem financial costs. Then back up your claim. And then propose a solution. Explain the benefits of your proposed solution. And then conclude by summarizing the problem and the solution. That is how you write a problem statement. Explain the problem, describe how things should work, explain your problem's financial cost, back up your claims, propose a solution, explain the benefits of your proposed solution, and then conclude by summarizing the problem and the solution. Let's go or carry on. How do you formulate the project objectives and the project goals? The goals and objectives. Goals and objectives are statements that describe what the project will accomplish or the business value the project will achieve. That is the goal. In short, we say that the goal can be seen as the high level shoot for the stars vision, while the objectives are the grounded, well thought about plan to reach that vision. Goals are high-level statements that provide overall context of what the project is trying to achieve. Objectives are the lower-level statements that describe the specific, tangible products and deliverables that the project will deliver. In short, the definition of goals and objectives is more of an art than a science. It can be difficult to define them and align them correctly. So you've got to be clear about each of them. Your goal, what are you aiming to achieve? And then the objectives, the specific tangible products and deliverables. And I would like to end there. I was trying to look at the time so that we can have enough time for questions and answers. And I really hope that I've been clear on proposal writing. I've been clear on the project, on the problem statement, the organizational background, and the formulating of the project objectives and goals. So I want to welcome any question. Maybe we take, Mark, I don't know how many questions we're going to take. We only have 10 minutes. Mark?
Hello, Njoki. We can take a few questions so that we move to the second part of the presentation.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes. If you have a question, just raise up your hand. I'll try to answer as Abdulai.
Hello.
I hope that is the proper pronunciation of your name.
Yeah, I'm from Mali.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It has been a nice presentation. I really appreciate. Yeah, but I don't know if you can talk much a bit on a theory of change. Sorry, my pronunciation. I'm speaking French.
Yes. The theory of change.
Change, yes.
Maybe just to mention, because you have raised it, but I think it is good. Maybe we'll organize another webinar on where we can go into details about the theory of change and the logical framework so that we can understand the two metrics, especially in the monitoring and evaluation. But the theory of change is actually the clear picture of the path that you're going to follow to achieve your goal, in short. It is more of a narrative of your objective. Yes.
So it doesn't happen when we are writing a proposal.
It is part of the monitoring. It is taken as part of the monitoring and evaluation matrix.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Another question? Eliga Adwara. Yes, you can unmute.
Yes, yes, good afternoon, Doctor. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I would like to know at which stage of project planning do we conduct need analysis?
Thank you. The need analysis is conducted before you do the project planning, because it is what now drives you toward now designing the kind of a project that you're going to implement. You cannot design a project without the analysis. It is the guiding tool. It is what will explain everything about the project, the budget, the timelines, the scope, and also the donor you're going to plan, you're planning to approach. Have I answered you?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Can take another question. Isaac, I can see you on video. But I can't hear you. Are you muted, Isaac? Isaac, I can't hear you. I think you're muted. Isaac, are you speaking? I can't hear you. Maybe switch off the video and try to unmute. I still can't hear you. Maybe as you work on your microphone, we can take another question, Isaac. Thank you. Bamba. I can't pronounce the other one.
Good afternoon, Doc. Good afternoon, fellow participants.
Good afternoon.
The name is Bambi TC from Angel Support Foundation, Nigeria.
Right, welcome.
Okay, the presentation is good so far. I don't know if you are headed where I will need clarifications, but since somebody mentioned it, I thought maybe I should just ask so that we are also brought to speed. Okay, first and foremost, in developing your objectives, they have to be smart and relevantly connected to the situation on ground. For instance, if you have to solve FGM, you have to know the current situation of FGM within the context of the project which you want to implement. Now, my question is community needs assessment or sort of a baseline assessment important for all project development? And if you don't carry out a community needs assessment, how are you able to measure in concrete terms the current situation vis-a-vis what your intervention is going to solve? And secondly, somebody talked about the theory of change. I don't know if you are headed there, but I wanted to also know the exact position of a theory of change in developing a proposal. Is it compulsory that every proposal should have a theory of change? And how is it different from the objectives which every proposer always has? So for now, those are the two questions I have.
Thank you. Thank you. The first question on the community needs assessment. It is as important because that is what defines the importance of your intervention, because the community should be able to take in whatever interventions you are designing. That is why it is good to understand the community needs analysis. We look at if, for example, you're talking about FGM, we have to understand the cultural perspective of the community. Then you need to understand the community's exposure or the community's understanding of what you're trying to come and stop. So it is fundamental, it is important to do a community needs analysis, understanding its culture, understanding the community's disposition, and also the exposure. On the theory of change, I just want to mention, and I hope my colleague, when he's doing the logical framework, may explain, or maybe we have to decide, we are going to maybe plan for another webinar, so that now we can go into clear details on the theory of change. But it is good to have it. You either have the logical framework or have the theory of change, because they are the ones, these two tools are the ones that explains the project and the intervention and the outcomes. It explains your goals. The situation as of today is at -0%. When I start implementing, when I do the community mobilization and the sensitization, will be at 1%. When we start now implementing the actual implementation, whatever it is, it will be at 10%. So the theory of change explains every milestone. It explains each milestone in the objective. I hope I've answered you. I hope I've not confused you further. Bye-bye.
No, you have not.
Yeah. But we can have, I know the Capacity Africa, we are going to organize another webinar and then we can explain that fully. Thank you. Do we still have time? Waswa, Wes, unmute.
Okay,
Who? Oh, Isaac, you're back.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
In writing the proposal, the problem statement, you indicated that you include the solution.
Yes.
And I was wondering how much information on the solution we can include in the problem statement, because the other sections of the proposal will outline how you address your problem, the problems that you outline in the problem statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have stated that in the problem statement, you describe the problem. That is, you're describing the situation as it is. And then with 1 or 2 sentences, just state the solution. That's all. You're not explaining it. In the other sections, you will explain your intervention. That is your project. But for this one, because it is for the purpose of the proposal, you just state your solution. Short sentences.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Taban? No, Waswa's hand was first, and then we'll go to Taban. Can somebody tell me whether we are still on time? Waswa, can you hear me? I hope that is the proper pronunciation. That's what I can see on my screen. Go ahead. Waswa, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Anyway, as you work on your microphone, let's welcome Taban Charles.
Yes, thank you, Doctor, and thanks to everyone, my fellow participants. And thank you so much.
Just hold on, Taban. You have an echo. I can't hear you clearly.
So I'm saying thank you so much for the presentation.
Yes, Karibu.
Yeah, I just have one comment and then a question. I think on the question of the theory of change, if you look at the project structuring or formulation, the theory of change has a very critical role because it will guide you on your overall goals, it will guide you on the objectives, it will guide you on the outcomes, the intended outcomes, and then the risk and the assumptions that goes along together with the project implementation. So I would also go with the idea that maybe there's a need to have one time a thorough discussion about the theory of change, because many times I've seen that sometimes projects struggle with a combination of a realistic theory of change that can be measurable, because the theory of change has to be measurable at the end of the day. But my important question that I want to ask, looking at combination of the project objectives and project goals, I know that sometimes there are challenges related to the project objectives and project goals. So what specific information is required to inform a realistic formation of project objectives and goals? Thank you.
Thank you, Aswa. I think I've explained that. Yeah, thank you. I have explained that the goal is the aim. I don't want to use many words. The goal is the aim. The objectives are the tangible. It's like the pathway that you're moving towards the aim or towards what you're trying to achieve. That is in simple words. Maybe I would encourage you maybe to register with the project management class. Then that will be explained now in details in the modules. But for this webinar, it's normally just an overview, but that is all I can say in simple words. The goal is the aim. The objectives are the tangible or the pathway towards your aim. Thank you. Maybe two last questions. Faiz, there was another one. Yeah, Faiza, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this session. Great. But I'd like to ask about objective. Is it the ultimate outcome that I can touch from my project? Can I talk about this? The objective, is it the tangible, maybe the tangible result that I can take from my project, the ultimate outcome? Or is it different?
The ultimate outcome is a goal.
Yeah. There is a misunderstanding. The goal, I mean the goal. The goal is the ultimate outcome.
The ultimate outcome. That's the goal.
Yeah. Okay.
And normally in a project, the goal is one.
Yeah.
But you have a number of objectives because they are different. Yes. There are many different tangibles and deliverables.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Maybe I can take one last question before I head over to the Irene.
Okay. I think there's no question left, but I'd just like to remind the participants that we still have another session. Mr. Stephen Mushami is still coming up with the second part of the session, so kindly remember you still have time to ask more questions. Professor Njoki, it has been a very wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. We have all understood clearly what you are presenting. And I'd like to remind the participants again, we are going to share the recordings. So you need to not worry. So remember again, those asking for the theory of change, log frame. Remember we have an M&E course that is monitoring and evaluation. We also have a project management course and several other courses where you'll be able to delve more into this. So remember to visit our website. Remember we are having this training on behalf of Capacity Africa Institute in partnership with Strategia Netherlands. So visit our website for these courses. We have diploma courses, we have postgraduate diploma, and we also have certificate courses. The certificate courses take 3 months. Diploma courses take 6 months, and we also have postgraduate which take a year. So kindly remember to visit our website for more information, and for any query, just write to us, we will answer you. And before we move to the next session, we can take a breather before we start off with Stephen Mushami. Let us take maybe 3 to 5 minutes. You can stretch, you can take water, you can visit the washroom. Then we come back and we just kick it off. So kindly stay put and don't go away. Thank you for being part of us for all this time. So continue being patient. We are starting again the next session in the next 5 minutes. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Irene?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Do you have still the discount for 20% for the courses?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do have a 20% discount if you're a participant from this session. Kindly write to us, and then one of our colleagues will get in touch with you. We are offering a 20% discount for participants from this session.
Thank you.
Okay, so let us take a break. We are coming back in the next 5 minutes.
Are you interested in building a career in the development and humanitarian sector? Then, Strategia Netherlands is the best option for you. We offer training solutions to the United Nations, governments, NGOs, and other development organizations worldwide. Make your online application now for Diploma in Monitoring and Evaluation, Diploma in Grants Management, Diploma in Conflict Management, Diploma in Disaster Management, Diploma in Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, and many more. The cost for diploma courses is 800 euros, while postgraduate courses cost 1,200 euros. Visit www.strategianetherlands.nl for more information. Did you know that 67% of Africans don't have access to proper housing, 56% have no access to water, and 79% have no access to food? These are the grim statistics of challenges facing Africa today, even as the continent works to develop. This development demands for well-trained personnel. At Capacity Africa Training Institute, we have been leading the charge in changing Africa's fortunes. We are the leading development training company in Africa, offering institutional training solutions and online and distance learning in business, development, and humanitarian courses. Over the last 10 years, we have trained over 10,000 staff from NGOs, governments, and the United Nations in Africa. Our catalog consists of over 200 career-focused online courses to choose from, and registration for diploma and postgraduate courses is now open for the following courses: Postgraduate Diploma in Monitoring and Evaluation, Postgraduate Diploma in Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, Diploma in Community Development, Postgraduate Diploma in Strategic Planning and Management, Postgraduate Diploma in Grants Management, Diploma in Project Management, Diploma in Nutrition and Dietetics, Diploma in Gender and Development, Diploma in Leadership and Management, Diploma in Finance Management for NGOs, and many more. We have also partnered with the European International University to offer an executive MBA. Once you register, you will have access to our team of experienced trainers and specialist consultants who will guide you on your course whenever you need them. The cost for diploma courses is $800 US, while postgraduate courses cost $1,200 US. The cost of a one-year MBA course is 1,500 euros. Visit www.capacityafrica.com for more information.
Very good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. From wherever you are attending from, I hope that as we come to the end of our break, I would just like to thank Dr. Joaquim Tugo for the morning on the earlier sessions that we had, and also Karegwa for the sessions that had passed. This afternoon, this evening, or the next few minutes, we are going to start our session with a second part of this presentation. My name is Mark Rabudi, signing in to moderate the second part of this training. I would like to let you know that we will be able to send to you the presentations and also the recording. You can always also visit our websites and be able to see what we do in both Capacity Africa and also Strategia Netherlands. And if there's any other issue that you may want to raise with us, we have our colleagues online. Irene is still online. Nora is online. We have myself is also online. We have Walter online, and Debbie also is online. We'll be able to respond to your queries or anything that you want to know, and follow-ups and so on and so forth. At the moment, I can see we are still full house, and that's very good. So I would like to urge you to stay put. Maybe you've gotten your water or something to bite as I bring our next presenter. Stephen Mushami is our resident trainer, and he is also an associate of Strategia Netherlands. And he should be coming in to take us to the next session that will take us to the next maybe 45 to 1 hour coming before we settle in for a set of questions again. Stephen, if you are in the house, could don't raise your hands, but just say something so that I can get that you are here.
Yes, Mark, I'm connected and I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, Stephen, loud and clear. Pleasure hearing from you. I see that Faiza had the hands up. I don't know if that was responded to. Faiza, can you unmute if there's an issue? Well, very well. So therefore, Stephen, please take it over, and I'll be coming to close this after you are done. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thank you for being able to introduce this session. And I will also want to take this opportunity also to appreciate as well Irene for starting us off, and also Mr. Karegwa for being able to give us a very good introduction on practical issues that we actually need to be able to consider when it comes to fundraising, and also my very well-abled colleague trainer, that is Dr. Njuki, for being able to give us the first part of this particular session, where I want also to be able to pick up from, so that we probably also take some further deep dive on some of the components that Njoki was able to present today. And I will be looking forward to be able to have that discussion as much as possible. I think it has been emphasized earlier on. Let's make sure that we are able to keep our microphones on mute so that we will ensure we do not get background noise from the presentations. And that would be very, very good. And we can always be able to use the button for raising the hand anytime we want to be able to make a comment. Let me also say, at different instances, I will be requesting for your participation, as we are looking at a number of concepts, maybe some of the application areas that you have had in your own projects. and that would be very, very good to be able to look at. So also I also want to mention that there are some few areas that have been mentioned, and I think I have actually been able to consider some of those two areas just to bring some good clarification around those two elements. That's the logical framework, or rather what people call the log frame, and also the issue of the theory of change. Two concepts, sometimes they give a lot of confusion to development professionals out there. Sometimes people don't really get to understand the difference between the two, and also the fact that why do they become a matter of consideration when it comes to proposal writing and fundraising, and why would the donors always be able to go for them? And that's something that we will also be highlighting as well. But let me see, I think, let me see if I can be able to do this in about 1 hour and about 17 minutes, so that I can see if I can be able to wind up by because I had about 1.5 hours to be able to look at this. So let me see if I can manage to be able to quickly look into this in the next 1.25 hours, and see how much we can be able to look at, and just allow you to have some quick moment of feedback and questions that you may have, and any comments that you may want to be able to share, and we will be able to do that at that particular point. Then just to go back to introduction, I know Mark has been able to introduce me. So I am actually a trainer on this area of proposal writing and fundraising. And I've been able also to consult in this particular area, quite a number of years working in different NGOs. And as Karegwa said earlier on, I think we got to be able to meet in that world of fundraising some years back. And basically, we've been able to do a lot in this area of proposal writing and fundraising. So we really want to make sure that we can share quite a lot, that we are actually able to we are actually able to make these concepts very clear to you. So basically what we are going to do is we will try to make the concepts quite clear, quite easy to be able to think, and that's one of the things that I will be able to do. And so you will see a lot of emphasis on my end regarding definition of concepts, because I just want to make sure that these are very clear, because in my actual work practice, I do assist a lot of organizations, international and local NGOs, just to be able to clarify some of these concepts and make sure that they are actually utilized in work settings in the right way. So I'll be able to make some very clear definitions for you. And feel free to always engage. As I've said, I will have a good feedback session, and I will also be able to engage you at particular points in this particular discussion that I want to be able to go through. Let me see if I can be able to get my screen so that you can actually be able to see it. Yes, that's fine. So good. So basically, this is the second part of the proposal writing and fundraising webinar that we've been having. I just want to go into some other components that, as Dr. Njoki told us earlier on, that I will be able to give further details on some of those components. And that's basically what I want to be able to go through and just be able to give some extra details regarding some of those areas, so that we are very, very clear when it comes to proposal writing. So I will be able to get into that. And of course, part of this is also to make sure that I achieve some of these objectives, where I just want to be able to discuss the development of activities in proposal writing and fundraising, and also discuss the development of the work plan in proposal writing and fundraising. Again, also, I will also be able to discuss on project management, monitoring and evaluation as well. And again, also discuss on the risks and assumptions in proposal writing, and also be able to discuss on the issue of project results in terms of expected outcomes and impact. We'll be able to be looking at that as well, and also to discuss the development of the project budget as well in proposal writing and fundraising. And as usual, I think it is always good to be able to have a feedback session in such a webinar. So it's important that we're able to get some feedback, have some questions posed by the participants, so that we can be able to answer some of those questions as much as possible. So let's be able to get into some of those contents. But just before I get into that, I just want to clarify something. When you get into proposal writing and fundraising, most of the times, if you deal with different donors, they will always be very, very clear on exactly what they actually want. And I think this is a tip I just wanted to be able to provide generally into this area of proposal writing. And this is just something that I've just extracted from a proposal evaluation score sheet for the European Commission. I know most of you may know the European Commission, and I think could be that some of your projects or programs are handled by the European Commission. And these were clearly some of the things that they had been able to outline in terms of the proposals that they were actually supposed to be able to receive, and they needed to actually be able to specify how are they going to be able to evaluate the proposals. Personally, I've been able to sit in some of these proposal review committees, and I know the score sheet is quite important, because we will normally be a panel, but in that particular panel, you realize that there is a guide that actually guides us as we look at the different proposals. And so one of the things is the evaluation score sheet. And so in some of the proposals that you may want to be able to submit, they can actually be able to make some of these score sheets available so that you get to actually understand exactly how they are going to be scoring. And in certain instances, they will make this private, so they will not really exactly tell you what are the components that they will actually be able to use to evaluate. But generally, in the terms of reference, you will always realize that there is a structure in terms of what they want you to be able to respond to. So in this one, as you can see, is that there's a whole issue of the relevance of the action, where they actually need to make sure that the activity needs and constraints of the country need to be addressed to those target groups and the final beneficiaries in particular. And then the relevance to the priorities and objectives mentioned in the guidelines. Then there's the whole section on effectiveness and the feasibility of action. Then you can see also that component there where they are also emphasizing on the sustainability of the action. So why I was bringing in this is that the outline that will always guide you in your proposal should always be congruent with the structure of the expectations of the donor that actually wants you to prepare that particular proposal. So this was for an EC, that's European Commission evaluation score sheet. And you can see now, based on that, then when you're making your application, then you need to actually be able to arrange it to be congruent with the score sheet that they'll actually be able to use, so that if they go to your application or proposal, then they will actually be able to actually see some of the items that you have emphasized in terms of what they actually want to be able to look at. And this becomes very, very important. And it is always something that we always want to mention to people who write proposals, to people who participate in fundraising, so that we can be able to know that. Because one of the challenges that we have always found is that, of course, you're responding to a proposal, and then, of course, you have an earlier proposal that you had actually been able to prepare some while back. And what you find is that, you know, some people just pick up that proposal, change content, and just submit it. And sometimes it does not really work out very well, because what the donor is trying to look at is, have you been able to read the requirements clearly and understand how you are supposed to respond, so that you are able to address the key concerns of the donor as much as possible. So it's always good to make sure. So the outline that you will have basically should cover the same general topics, and it is also good to ensure that as much as it might use some different language from the actual structure, but it should be able to reflect what the specific donor is actually looking for. And that becomes very, very important just to highlight before we start. So let's just go to this section. The next thing that we needed to be able to understand is the development of activities in our proposal. And it is important for us to be able to understand that is very, very important to make sure that we are able to understand how to be able to develop activities, because before you proceed to the development of activities, it is also important to be able to be clear on the project strategy. And why am I bringing this whole issue of the project strategy? Is because sometimes some donors are very, very wise, in the sense that they want to make sure that you can be able to relate your activities with your strategy. And so it's basically very, very important to be able to, first of all, clear out on the project strategy, because remember, at this point, as Dr. Njoki was able to take us through, we have been able to formulate the aims and also the objectives of our proposal or of our project. And it is important that we actually now proceed to activities. But some donors basically sometimes want to be able to see whether there is logical connection between your objectives, your project strategy, and your project activities. And that's why for some of us who are not able to really formulate the project strategy in that kind of a scenario, then the donor will actually be able to know that this particular proposal is not logical. So what is project strategy? Why do some proposal guidelines ask for project strategy and some do not? And the key thing now is to see, do you have specific strategies? That, and the other thing is that this project strategy will always align your project activities with the project goals and objectives. And maybe just to give you some examples of project strategy so that you can always be able to remember that. Is like, for instance, you could have a project that basically focuses on capacity building, or basically a project that wants to focus on awareness raising. So capacity building, awareness raising is the project strategy. This is not an activity, it's actually a strategy that the project actually wants to be able to use. Then secondly, you could also be having a project that focuses on organizational development, where we have a project here that we want to probably support organizational development of small community-based organizations. And I've seen a lot of projects that are dealing with the issue of organizational capacity development, especially for small community-based organizations and civil society organizations. And then again, also, it could be research and development, where we just want to focus on some research. And out of that research, then we need to be able to define the activities in that research strategy. Of course, you could also have a project that basically focuses on advocacy. So advocacy becomes the strategy. Or you could also be able to have a project that basically focuses on victim support and strategy. Or you could also be able to have a project that basically focuses on microfinance development strategy, which is also something that you can be able to focus on. And then again, also, you could also be able to have some project that basically focuses on participatory infrastructure development strategy that also becomes very, very critical to be able to focus on. So once you have been able now to clarify on the project strategy, now you can be able to proceed to project activities as expected. And when you're looking at project activities, these are basically the smallest identifiable, measurable pieces of work that have actually been planned throughout the project. And it's always good to make sure that we are able to understand that particular definition, that these are the smallest activities or actions that we can be able to identify and we can be able to measure of the work that is planned to be completed throughout the project. And being able to define activities will always be able to help the project staff be able to understand what actions they actually need to be able to do and at what time they actually need to be able to undertake those activities as expected. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to understand that. So one of the things that you'll also be able to find is most activities will always be associated with a definite interim goal or objective. And so it's always good to make sure that we're able to see that same thing. Also, every activity will also be associated with the respective project strategy. And it is always good to be able to understand that as well. So for instance, if you look at some of these activities that can be organized, we'll actually be looking at organizing training workshops, being able to do some street shows, being able to do some certain rallies in the community. And these are basically very, very specific activities that we can be able to do. And these are basically can be related to one of the strategy that we mentioned. Who can remember that strategy that we mentioned earlier on? That basically covers the issue of the training strategy and the street shows for that particular matter. Somebody who can remember that? We were able to mention one of the specific strategies, and that would actually be able to classify the training workshops and also the street shows and the rallies. I think it's a very easy thing that you normally do in most projects. You have that.
This is capacity building.
Yeah.
Capacity building.
Yeah. Capacity building. That's very, very good. Very, very good. This is basically dealing with capacity building. And it is important to be able to always have an opportunity to always relate your activities to the strategy that the project is going to be able to use to accomplish what it actually needs to be able to do. So that becomes very, very important to be able to recognize and be able to utilize as much as possible. Again, also the street shows and the rallies there will simply fall under the awareness strategy that the project can actually be able to use. Then, of course, there will be activities like, being able to do staff selection, staff training, and then again also be able to undertake like a baseline survey. Most organizations probably want to be able to undertake a baseline survey. They also want to be able to undertake a participatory rural appraisal, and also be able to undertake a focus group discussion. Those are some of the things that we can always be able to find. And then again, also the conferences, the meetings, the articles, and the publications could also be specific activities that we can actually be able to undertake. And these are some of the activities that we will always have in normal activities. Or you're probably establishing some shelter homes, you're probably offering counseling, or you're probably offering some legal support. It is something that you can always be able to have. Then again, also being able to form self-help groups and cooperatives would also be some specific activities that you can be able to have, or you're building irrigation tanks, or you're having what we call demo plots. Those are some of the things that you can always be able to have as well when it comes to be able to look at some of those activities that we actually need to be able to have. So that's how is important to always ensure that you understand activities that you'll actually need to be able to frame and also relate them to the project strategies. And I just want to show you a table here. Basically tries to relate some of those activities to the strategies that I've mentioned. You can see when it comes to the strategy of raising awareness, if your project is going to be able to focus on raising awareness. So you can see specific activities that you can actually be able to undertake will include social media coverage, public demonstrations, and also be able to undertake rallies as much as possible. And the reason why sometimes we are able to emphasize this quite a lot is because sometimes I'm able to participate in some proposal writing team, and we are sitting there and we are asking ourselves, now what will be the specific activities for this particular project? And at the moment when we are able to switch our focus into the strategies, first of all, for this particular project, and we say that one of the strategies that we want to focus on for this project is raising awareness. The other strategy could be the issue of organizational development or something to do with research. Then it becomes very easy now to be able to actually outline the activities as expected. So, so make sure you are always able to consider the relationship between the strategies and the activities. And that is why I'm being able to show you that relationship table. Maybe also before we continue, I would also just want to ask one of you if you can also be able to propose a project strategy and what would be the specific strategy, specific activities for that particular strategy, because I know most of us are working in NGOs, and I'm sure we are able to formulate strategies for our projects. So could you mention one project strategy and some of the activities that could be there? Let me see who wants to be able to answer this. You can raise your hand. Please try. It doesn't have to be most accurate, as long as you can give your thoughts on what you can consider as a strategy and also the specific activities for that strategy. Okay. Somebody? You can just raise your hand up and I will be able to see your hand. Just a good example, just to be able to show a strategy that we actually want to be able to use, and also mention maybe an activity or some activities around that strategy. So, so that would be good to be able to look at that. Faiza, you want to try that? I can see your hand is raised up, Faiza.
Sorry, nothing, but I missed to down it before this.
Okay, okay. You forgot to raise to put it down. Okay, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Then Beatrice, you want to say something?
Yeah, promotion of girls' education.
Yeah, wonderful.
As a strategy.
And that is actually a strategy, the promotion of girl-child education. That's a strategy that you could actually be able to use in a particular project. And please go ahead, Beatrice. What are some of the activities that we'll probably be able to include in that strategy?
Like, for example, the enrollment exercise maybe could be targeting more girls than the boys during the enrollment.
Yes, yeah. Looking at the enrollment of the girls in schools, and that's something that you might want to be able to probably get some secondary data around that, just to be able to see how are the enrollment levels. And then actually you could also be able to get a way to be able to recruit beneficiaries of your program. And those are good activities, Beatrice. And thank you for that, Beatrice. And I can see a few more people want to be able to respond to that. Let me be able to look at Eriga. Eriga, you had raised your hand up earlier. So let me be able to hear from Eriga, a strategy in maybe some activities.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephen. The strategy is prevention of malnutrition in children under 5. And
Okay.
one of the activities would be screening of children under 5 for malnutrition in that catchment area.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
And I think
then
you also bring a good example in the area of malnutrition, prevention of malnutrition in children under 5. So that could be a good strategy. And so you're mentioning some activities. Do you have another activity, Eriga?
Yeah, of course, there could be many activities under that. Another one is the referral, the active funding of malnutrition cases, then through referral, then also admitting children with the acute malnutrition for management.
Okay. And yeah, of course, there could be quite a number of activities, basically, when you talk about prevention of malnutrition. And, you know, a lot of organizations basically focus on that, the whole aspect of prevention of malnutrition, because, you know, we have quite a significant challenge on malnutrition, particularly in Africa. And those are some of the areas where development and humanitarian organizations will always focus their efforts on. So I think that's a good share of example. So Abdullahi, Abubakar, Taban, Dowari, Bamba, and Fanilad, I'll give you some opportunity just to be able to give some examples, because I definitely want also to be able to get a couple of examples from what you are doing, because I know most of you are also dealing with proposal writing and fundraising. And so it is also good to be able to hear some of the examples that you will be able to have. So, so no worry, I will be able to get back to you just to be able to hear some of the examples that you may have. But let me also move a little bit further and just also emphasize the whole issue of also being able to develop a work plan, which is quite critical as well. And once you have your activities, then the next thing is you don't just state your activities and leave it there. It's always good to make sure that in a proposal structure, you are able to provide your activities in the form of a work plan. And that's why the work plans really become important. Because we know that projects will always take time to be able to implement. For example, if you have a short workshop, it could actually be able to take a lot of planning before the actual event, and also during the follow-up after the event. It would also be able to need a lot of planning around it, and that's why the work plans actually become important. And a work plan or a project timeline should be able to describe the order and the length of time in which each activity will actually be able to take place. So, so whenever you have a work plan or a project timeline, you should be able to describe the order and the length of time that each activity will actually be able to take. And this is specific things that donors actually want to be able to see. And so it includes, first of all, being able to show each step that will be useful in implementing the project. Then again, it should be able to show when each step will actually be able to occur and for how long. So the duration also becomes critical in that sense. How long is that particular step going to take, and who will actually be responsible for each of those steps. So that becomes very important to be able to show that. And so therefore, having a detailed work plan is able to prove that your organization has put much thought in planning the project, and also is able to set expectations for the project progress, which will actually be monitored. And let me tell you, as a matter of fact, these are things that come out clear in proposal review committees that actually receive proposals. You'll actually be able to get a proposal, and when you look at the work plan, you actually tell that this organization did not put thought in terms of planning for the project. Because if you look at their work plan, it is not detailed. There are a lot of gray areas in their work planning. And as a result, then you will always be able to put your attention into an organization that was actually able to detail its work plan, so that you can see how much they have thought about how some of those activities are going to be implemented. And so that really becomes important, and is able to set specific expectations for the project progress and how the project will actually be monitored. And so one of the best tools for being able to develop a work plan is simply what we are able to refer to as a Gantt chart. And so this is one of the tools that is very important to make sure that we're able to develop a work plan. And that's why I will always encourage proposal writers to make sure that they even have tools that can actually be able to help them prepare a Gantt chart. And a Gantt chart is simply a table that basically summarizes and visualizes the schedule or the timeline of the project activities as actually proposed. So basically, we are able to summarize, we are also able to visualize the schedule or the timeline of the project activities. And of course, you know why this is important, because something visualized becomes easier to understand. That's why we always want to present the work plan in the form of a Gantt chart, because if it's something visual, becomes very easy to understand. And that's why the Gantt chart really helps a lot in that. Now, if you want to prepare the Gantt chart, of course, a lot of development and humanitarian professionals, they will actually be able to use just a table to be able to represent this. But sometimes the table has limitations in the sense that it will not allow you to format diagrams, and so it becomes limited. And so sometimes if we just use a normal table in Microsoft Word, you are not able to come out with a very good Gantt chart, and that's why people go further and use Microsoft Excel to be able to create their Gantt chart as expected. Now, in terms of also just not being able to use Excel only, you can also be able to use Microsoft Project. And actually, this one I really encourage a lot of proposal writers to know how to be able to use Microsoft Project, because in Microsoft Project, it presents you with an excellent diagram that actually shows the seriousness of this organization in terms of planning. And every time you're able to include a Gantt chart that has been prepared via Microsoft Project, the donor reviewers of the proposal on the other end, this is quite a serious organization, because if their planning actually happens in tools like Microsoft Project, it becomes very, very important. And so I think one of the days we will also be able to get an opportunity just to prepare also a webinar on the same, basically on how to be able to use Microsoft Project also for planning as well. And again, there are also other softwares. Nowadays, what I've realized is that the tools for preparation of the Gantt charts are very many. There are very many, depending on the project complexity. But one of the most popular, one of the most used is usually Microsoft Project as well. So it's always good also to make sure, one of the things that we want to be able to emphasize there is the fact that we are able to split project activities into small activities, and also ensure that we are able to have very clearly defined activities in our work plan. So that becomes very, very important to be able to know. And one of the things that work plans are able to show us is, of course, they will be able to show us the list of activities, that is the steps that will be used to complete those activities, also the time periods and the duration for each activity. That is it in days, is it in months, is it in weeks, the time period. And then, of course, also it helps us be able to identify what are the persons and the teams responsible for being able to complete each activity and each step, ideally with one point of contact as expected. And all this information is actually put in a table that is actually easy to read and also work with. And that is why you are able to end up with a Gantt chart that looks like something of this nature. So this one is just prepared by Microsoft Excel. And so some of us who are very good in terms of formatting Microsoft Excel can actually also be able to create for you a Gantt chart that shows the activities. And you can see that those activities, the duration that they will actually take is some of those cells are colored. And so it helps, it gives somebody some good visual to understand when some of those activities will actually be conducted. And so it becomes very, very important. So those three things that we said about work plans, first, we need to see the list of activities. Secondly, we need to see the time periods. And thirdly, we need to be able to see the persons or the teams responsible to be able to work on that. And maybe I could also ask one of you who has the experience of creating Gantt charts, which tool you actually use. Some of you could be using some of the tools that I've mentioned here, but also you could be having a different tool that you actually use to prepare the work plan. And I think it's also good to hear that particular experience. Somebody who has been very conversant with creating gadgets for some of the proposals. If you could just raise your hand, I think we could also be able to hear that from your end. So somebody who has had that experience of preparation of gadgets in some of their proposals. Okay, that silence means that we do not share gadgets with our donors. Does that mean so? Does it mean we have not been actually been able to do that before? And that means then we have been missing quite a significant opportunity to be able to showcase the Gantt charts that we're able to prepare or the work plans that we're able to prepare. Maybe Kofi Essien, you wanted to share something in regards to that?
Yes, Kofi Essien from Ghana. Gantt chart is one thing that we use often in our office, even for our normal work activities. When the year starts, you should be able to put all the activities you want to do into a Gantt chart and you follow it to the end. And it's a very helpful tool as you use. In the same way, when it comes to much of the proposals, in fact, our leader is Isaac Olesu. He's also on this call, on this webinar. Most of the proposals, we develop a Gantt chart in addition to whatever you write. That one will show you what you have to do at any point in time. So it's a very useful tool that we have been using most of the time in our activities and our proposal writings. Thank you.
Yes, it's very, very critical. And just to mention, Kofi, if you send a proposal and I happen to be the one reviewing that, I'm always keen to check on some of the proposals that are not able to share their work plans in the form of the Gantt chart. And of course, I can always be able to tell that if we are not able to showcase our work plan, then it means we didn't do some very good preparation in terms of planning for this project. And so how assured am I that once we award funds to this organization, that they will actually have the proper project management skills to be able to manage those funds? It always starts on the impression that you create on the proposal by ensuring that you have a very good, clear activities that you want to implement, and also you're able to show us the time period that you actually want to implement those activities, and also who will be responsible, because we don't want activities just to hang, but we really want to know, particularly in projects that are implemented that are multi-partner. You have a project that you are actually undertaking several organizations. Then the issue of responsibilities really becomes clearly, so that we can get to know what each partner is going to do in that multi-partner project. So it becomes very, very important to be able to prepare that. So that's good, Kofi, from Ghana, for being able to showcase how you are also able to use Gantt charts. So if you've not been creating this before, I think that was the whole importance of also being able to attend this webinar. And as you're saying, I think later on we will see if we can be able also to organize a webinar on just to show you how to be able to create some of these work plans when you're using some of the tools such as Excel and Microsoft Project that we know that are very good in giving you very good Gantt charts to be able to use for your projects. Now, let's just now be able to proceed and also look at the next section that we also wanted to be able to highlight. And here we just also wanted to be able to highlight another important section where you will be asked to be able to present your project management plan, and also your monitoring and evaluation plan. These sections are very, very critical to most donors, and it becomes very, very important that you are actually able to highlight them clearly as much as possible. So it's always good to ensure that you can actually be able to highlight how the project is going to be able to handle the issue of project management and the monitoring and evaluation plan as well. Now, in terms of project management, this is simply a section that basically talks about project management aspects, that is the implementation stuff, and also the implementation schedule. So we want to be able to understand exactly how is the project organized in terms of having people that can actually do the project management, and also being able to have an implementation schedule. And we have already specified that when we have looked at the work plan. We have been able to emphasize aspects of the implementation schedule. And also the other part is also ensuring that you can ensure that you're able to describe some of the people who will actually be hired as part of the project team, along with their respective roles. And it is always good to be able to highlight that. And some of the project team members that you can always be able to showcase is, like, for instance, who will be the project director, that is, who will be responsible for the overall administration and the management of the project. This really becomes important because he or she will be able to develop proposals for future funding, and will also be the person expected to be able to manage other staff as expected. Then, of course, some of the projects will also have social workers or field team members. These are basically people who are responsible for mobilization, also who are responsible for conducting initial village level meetings, and also orientation sessions as expected. So these are basically those kind of social workers that are responsible for ensuring that they are able to mobilize and they are able to conduct initial village level meetings and orientation sessions as expected. Then thirdly, we also are able to get trainers, and in some projects where, like we spoke before, we have a capacity building project that will focus its strategy on capacity building. Then, of course, you will need to be able to have some trainers, maybe some 3 trainers for conducting training on soft skills, tailoring, and jewelry design. So that also becomes part of the project team. And similarly, you can also be able to mention about the implementation schedule of activities. And I think that we were able to highlight under the work plan session. So it's always good to make sure that you're able to mention some project management aspects for your proposal as well. Now, the other thing that also becomes important is to basically highlight monitoring and evaluation. And in fact, in certain proposals, you will find that the call for proposals does not tell you to address project management, but it will definitely be able to tell you to address monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation is very, very critical. And why it becomes critical is because project results are very, very important. Any donor out there is not so much interested in just funding you, but they're actually interested in the results that this funding will actually be able to produce. And that's why the results really become important, and it is the results that actually drive the whole importance of monitoring and evaluation as expected. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to value the project results as expected. And so, so monitoring and evaluation, they are basically the reason why the project exists, and also the reason why the donors would actually be interested in funding the project. So this is one of the reasons why a project will actually be existing, and also the reason why donors will actually be interested in ensuring that they are actually able to fund the project as expected. So it's always good to ensure that you are actually able to see some of these things clearly. Now, that is also why donors are also very interested in actually knowing what exact results will be and how those results will actually be measured. And that's why the M&E plan therefore becomes very, very useful in the proposal. So you have to be able to showcase what is your plan for monitoring and evaluation is something that the donors will actually be able to look at. And it is important to basically be able to have a well-defined M&E plan that actually helps to be able to monitor the project activities and also to be able to evaluate the results of the project. So, so it is important to make sure that we can actually be able to have that. So it's always important to make sure that we have a well-defined monitoring and evaluation plan that helps you monitor the project activities and also, excuse me, helps you to evaluate the results of the project. And so just to make sure that we are clear to some of us who are not, who probably not so much knowledgeable about monitoring and evaluation, why it's called monitoring and evaluation is because monitoring is different from evaluation. And so when you talk about monitoring, we will simply be referring to the process of ensuring that we're able to measure, we're able to document progress, achievements, and results through the project. And we will be able to do this with the main goal being to be able to ensure that the project is going according to the plan or see whether there is need to make adjustments at some point. And so monitoring, therefore, becomes an ongoing process throughout the project or program as expected. So monitoring, therefore, becomes quite critical to be able to look at it. So it's an ongoing process throughout the project or program. And it is very, very critical to make sure that we are actually able to look at it in that regard. Now, the other thing is evaluation, and evaluation is simply the second step in the approach, where the data collected during the monitoring process is simply analyzed and also evaluated in order to be able to determine if the project results have actually been achieved or not. So it's important to make sure that we are able to understand evaluation. So after the data has actually been collected through the monitoring process, then again, we are able to use that information to make sure that we can determine if the project results have actually been achieved. And so a good evaluation strategy will always give legitimacy to an organization. So when we're able to look at your proposal and we see that you have a good evaluation plan or an evaluation strategy, then it actually gives legitimacy to this particular organization. And so, so some of the basic setup and operation steps that you should actually be able to mention for your monitoring and evaluation is like, for instance, that you're able to determine what exactly needs M&E in the project. So you're able to showcase that. Then you're also able to define and agree on the M&E indicators that will be used. And remember, in some of the proposals, actually you have to pinpoint the specific indicators that you'll be able to use to determine whether your results have actually been achieved. And again, also being able to indicate what are some of the project risks and assumptions that are inherent in the project. And in a short while, I'll be turning my attention to the risks and assumptions that could actually be there in the project. That's something that we would also want to be able to look at. And then again, also be able to take a baseline measurement of project indicators before the project actually begins. So it's always good to ensure that you're able to emphasize on the issue of baseline measurement of project indicators, also be able to emphasize on the importance of continually monitoring the project regularly, and also ensure that you're able to emphasize the use of the collected data to be able to make decisions, and lastly, be able to perform an evaluation as expected. So it's always good to make sure that you can actually be able to have some of those things in place as expected. So it's a critical section, but then again, there's a section that is also becoming important in today's proposal writing and fundraising. And this is basically, and I think I've got a lot of questions on this in a lot of the forums that I participate, that what exactly are risks and what are exactly are assumptions, because you will be able to get a call for proposals, and the donor is very critical on making sure that you can identify the risks for your project and the assumptions for your project. And risk management, risk assessment and management has therefore become a very regular topic in today's development and humanitarian sector. We are able to get a lot of specific interest on that, because if we don't identify our risks, then how are we going to make sure that our projects are actually successful? And that's why this really becomes very, very important to be able to highlight. And so what I will be able to do is I just want to also make sure we clarify exactly what we mean with risks and assumptions, and also just give you some specific examples that you can be able to identify as risks and assumptions for your project. Now, one thing is that, most projects will normally span for a long time. And that's the reason why it becomes important now to consider risks, because a donor is going to fund you here for a 5-year project or a 3-year project. I've seen even funding that goes for projects that will actually be funded for 10 years, And in this length of time that actually this project needs to be funded, then we have to make sure that proper planning needs to accompany this kind of projects very, very well. So planning literally needs to be done in advance. And while no one is able to perfectly predict the future, and that's a perfect thing, because you cannot be able to predict the future. Like for instance, right now countries are battling with COVID-19. Nobody could tell that actually sometimes in the year 2020, 2021, COVID will be such a big risk to a lot of what projects are able to do. And so therefore, as a result of this, because we are funding you for the next 5 years, and you may not be able to predict exactly what will be able to happen, then it is always good to make sure that you think of possible problems that could actually be able to occur, that could actually be able to affect the project. And that's why now we are able to consider the issue of risks. And so risks basically are possible external factors that could actually come in and be able to negatively affect the project. So these are basically some external factors that could come in and negatively affect the project. And then this could be something like natural disasters, or probably you have change in government policy, or sometimes you have change in donor focus. Like for instance, you're able to identify sometimes back when Trump was a president, and he actually was able to take actual steps to withdraw funding from World Health Organization, and even was able to say there's no reason why America should be giving a lot of donations to poor countries, and he was almost really affecting the development world because of a change in their focus. And so, so those kind of threats can always be there, and they will always be able to affect a lot of the project work that we are doing. And it's always good to be able to identify them as risks that we actually need to be able to manage. Now, something that goes along with risks is this whole issue of assumptions. And assumptions basically also will be external factors that actually are assumed to be able to occur or are supposed to be there. So in other words, what are some of those external factors that are meant to be true or are meant to be consistent? And that's basically things that we want to make sure that we are able to identify as early as possible. That's why we are able to recognize some of those things. We are able to see that the assumption that the community willingness to be able to host a project will actually not be able to change, and prices, budget will always remain constant. Together with the laws affecting projects will actually not be able to change, and so some of those become important, or the laws affecting projects will not change, and so we are having that particular assumption in the project, and that's why we are making a proposal that we can actually be able to undertake these activities as a. That's why sometimes it becomes important to state assumptions. And one of the reasons people ask, why do we state assumptions? Why we state assumptions is because as much as we are stating them as true situations that will actually be able to happen, if they actually become negative, then they automatically risks. And that's why we always want to consider assumptions, because we know that if this assumption does not remain or does not hold, then we will actually be dealing with risk. And so it is important to always be able to understand the whole issue of assumptions as well. And one of the reasons why we're dealing with the issue of risks is because donors often dislike funding risky projects, and so they don't want to pour their funds in areas they know that we are not going to be able to achieve any project results. And so many applicants are naturally hesitant to be able to explain all the possible risks in a project, but it is important to be able to explain all the risks in a project, because identification of risks can actually convince the donor that as an applicant, you are well positioned to be able to handle anything that occurs on the project, because it is not a big issue to not to be able to, it's not a big issue for you to state the risks that the project will face, because all you need to be able to show is what is your management strategy for some of those risks. And that's basically where the donor is interested to see that you can identify risks, and you can also be able to propose what are the required management strategies for some of those risks. And so equally important, therefore, is being able to detail what risk mitigation strategies or what risk mitigation plans that you will actually be able to undertake so that you can be able to deal with the risks as expected. And I've also been able to show you here some of the risk mitigation strategies that you can always be able to use Some of those will be things like natural disaster risk. Then, of course, if that one happens, you will be able to explain that emergency supplies and food will actually be stocked in all project locations. And if there is a change in government policy that actually shuts down an office, because we know some of these things will happen, particularly in civil conflicts, then it is important to be able to show that you will be able to back up your files stored in another safe backup location, or you can basically be able to operate in a sister office or in a sister organization. So sometimes being able to describe some of those mitigation strategies really become very, very important to be able to look at. Then the other section that we'll probably be able also to turn our attention to is the issue of project results. And it is always good also to make sure that we can focus on the project results as a critical item that we are able to look at. And project results basically will be changes or effects that are actually expected to be able to take place after implementing the project. And of course, we have been able to mention that donors are actually interested in the results that come with the project. And that's why you have to be able to detail these results. And you always have to be able to show what are some of these changes, what are some of these effects that will actually be realized in the project. And so, the reason why donors will, of course, be interested in your funding proposal is the results, because they really value their money as much as possible. And it is always important to make sure that you are able to highlight many results that the project will actually achieve in its lifetime and after. And that becomes very, very important to be able to consider. And again, also the project results are basically positive improvements in the life of the beneficiaries. And we'll basically be able to have simply like three main types of results. I know we had listed expected outputs and impact, but sometimes some donors ask you also to show the expected outputs. So it is important to know the difference between the three. That is the expected outputs, the expected outcomes, and also the expected impact. I know from experience of working with in the development sector, we still have a lot of problems in terms of being able to differentiate what are outputs, what are outcomes, what are impacts. And simply, I just wanted also to define that for you and also give you some relative example on the same, so that you can be very, very sure when you're putting down your proposal on exactly what are project outputs, on exactly what are project outcomes, and also on exactly what are project impacts as expected. Now, when you talk about outputs, as you can see, is that when you talk about outputs, we're talking about what are the results achieved soon after you complete your activity. And that's what should always guide you when you're thinking about an output. After I do this activity, what will be the immediate thing after that? For instance, if you're able to organize a training on human rights, then the output will be the project was able to train this number of people on was able to train this number of locals on human rights. So that's something that you can actually be able to state and say 20 community workers were trained in basic human rights concepts. But then again, there is actually a further result from that, and that's what we talk about project expected outcomes. And these basically are the short-term results achieved after a period of time. Still using the same example, then if 20 community workers were trained in human rights concepts, then we are expecting that the participants were able to use their training to inform the community members about their human rights. And that's an outcome that we are able to see. And what will be the impact? That is the long-term result that will come about because of the outcomes that have been achieved. That is 3 years later, is that the election voting patterns will change significantly in this area, because a very specific example that we can see is that the country finally was able to vote against a leader who had a history of human rights violations based on some activity that was done in different areas that led to outcomes and significantly was able to have that long-term result for the project. And so it is always good to make sure that we are able to state our results. And one of the critical things when you're stating your results is to make sure that your results get this logical connection, because that's one of the biggest challenges we have when people are working out their outputs, outcomes, and impact. They are not able to show that linkage from the outputs, because the outputs are supposed to lead us to outcomes, and the outcomes are supposed to lead us to the project impacts as expected. Now, the other last section that we needed also to be able to emphasize is the whole issue of developing a project budget. And of course, when it comes to development of a project budget, simply refers to a document that will basically be able to specify how the money was actually allocated to implement the activities described in the proposal. And in simple words, we say the budget is always the proposal narrative that is explained in numbers. And actually that's true. You go and pick a budget, you can actually see the project, but basically the project is just explained in numbers in the budget. So it becomes very, very easy to also understand about the project. And then the budget is the most important part of any proposal. Of course, every donor would want to see that, and so that they get to know how much money should they be able to award you based on what you have requested. And so it becomes an important part of any proposal. That's very, very true. In the proper and a proper budget is always required to be able to convince the donors to be able to provide funding in the budgets. And the donors will typically be able to look for transparency. So they want to see this transparency in your budget estimates. You're able to demonstrate cost effectiveness, so you don't exaggerate costs. So it is important to be able to show that. There's value for money, because remember, donors will be funding you, but their interest is on the value for the money to show results. So it's important to actually be able to see that as much as possible. And then also the issue of capacity as well becomes very, very important to be able to see the capacity. And then the competitiveness to other NGOs also becomes very, very important to be able to see that. So competitiveness to the other NGOs also become important, and also ensuring that you're able to follow the donor guidelines, because in most calls for proposals, they are very, very clear on the guidelines that they actually want you to be able to follow as you're preparing the budgets as well. And so we normally have two basic types of budgets, and I think it's important for us to be able to understand that is simply we are able to have either a budget by activity or a budget by line item. So it's important to make sure that be able to know which format you're going to use. Are you going to prepare a budget by activity? And this is what we call activity-based budget. or are you going to prepare it by line item, which is basically what we call line item budgeting? And if you prepare by activity, basically it means that you organize the budget by activity. So if I look at your budget, I will see the logical order of activities and the costs associated to it. This budget by activity normally has the advantage of the fact that it is easy to understand and it is also easy to prepare. So if you are working with an activity-based budget, it's one of the easiest budgets to prepare because if you already have your work plan, then it's simply being able to cost your activities as they are in the work plan. So it's very, very easy to be able to use it most of the times. But if you use the line item, then it means that you lump up different kinds of costs in one budget item. And some of the budget items that you could have is like transportation, training, materials, and then some donors request this specifically to be able to give a good impression on which kind of activities your project wants to spend money at a glimpse. And this can be important if a donor has different budgets for different costs. That's why they will be able to ask for that. And I think this budget is normally difficult to prepare. It's not easy to prepare like the activity-based budget that we have just been able to highlight. And I was able to avail here just some simple samples for an activity-based budget and the line item budget. So the activity-based budget is what you see on the left there. You can see that that budget is listed as activity. So there's activity 1, annual conference, then there's activity 2, training volunteers, and then the specific costs for those, the specific costs under that activity are then costed. Same thing to the training of volunteers, and the total budget is costed at the bottom there. But if you look at the line item budget, it basically costs based on the expenses that generally you will have in a project. Like for instance, you have trainers, you have participants, transportation, you have catering, you have material and handouts, you have venue costs, and that also can actually be costed. So either you use the activity-based budget or you use the line item budgeting for your project. Each of them should be able to give you the same total. It's only that the presentation format will actually be different. And so it is important to make sure that we can actually be able to see that very, very clearly. Now, that's the thing that we wanted to be able to emphasize as the last component. And at this particular point, I don't think I will be able to have enough time to go through the logical framework and the theory of change. But just something to say about the logical framework is that this is basically a matrix, 4x4 matrix, and where we are able to just showcase the results of the project. And a lot of donors will always want this to be there because we consider it as a project design document. As a project design table, because it's normally presented as a matrix table, having 4 rows and 4 columns. And it is always good to make sure that we can include that in most proposals. It's always ideal. You can, if the donor has not requested for it as part of the structure for the proposal, always include it as an appendix because it is always able to help the donor understand how the project is actually designed. So it's always good to do that. Then one of us was also asking about the theory of change. I think it's also good to always attach it as an appendix if you can be able to have it. But basically the theory of change basically shows us how, what will be the pathway of change for the project. What is this that the project actually wants to change in the community? in what will be the specific pathway of change. And we normally say it's a visual diagram, but also it has narration trying to show how the results of the projects are going to contribute to its ultimate change, and what will be the pathways for that, and also what are some of the risks and assumptions that will actually be there as we move the project to achieve its ultimate change. So those are two diagrams that if you can always be able to include in your proposal as an appendix, that is if the donor has not actually requested for them, you can always be able to include them. But basically, there are two concepts that we cover in our courses. And so I would still welcome you to join some of our courses in monitoring and evaluation because we have specific sessions on that. And we are able to cover those concepts as much as possible. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to look at that as much as possible. So so we're able to ensure that some of those things are well covered. And I think what I will be able to do now is to get into some opportunity to be able to get some of your feedback, basically, so we can be able to get into your feedback that basically you want to be able to give us. What are some of the feedback, some of the questions that you may be having, and maybe I can be able to take that at this particular time. So so let me be able to take some feedback for this particular time. And I don't know, Irene, you're giving me how many minutes to answer to some of the questions and comments from the team?
Let's do Mushami.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Nick, how many? Yes, I can hear you.
This is Mark. So you can take maybe another 5 to 7 minutes because we have some other announcements to make. So maybe in the next 10 minutes we can wrap up.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine with me. So about 5 to 7 minutes. So so if you have a question that you would want me to be able to respond or a comment to make, please, if you raise your hand, I will be able to see you, and I will be able to give you an opportunity just to respond to you. Let's hear from Walter. No, is it across HOP? Hope that's someone who wants to.
It is across HOP, and I had a technical hitch and I joined the session a bit late. But I already put on the chat whether or not you'll be able to share the presentation so that maybe I can catch up with whatever I missed. I don't know whether it's PowerPoint or it's in Word or whatever form the presentation will be. Is that something which is feasible?
Okay, yeah. Definitely the presentation will actually be shared with everyone. And so there's no problem with that. And I think that was mentioned earlier on. The presentation will be shared, and also the recording for the session will also be shared. So we will be able to get that, no problem with that. So, so that's fine. Okay, welcome. You have a question, Beatrice?
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I would like to find out, in some proposals, you are required to rate the risk, whether it is low, medium, or high. Can you quickly give us some guidance on how to do this rating effectively?
Okay. Isaac, thank you for a very good question. That's a very good question, simply that comes in the section for risk, identification and management. And we are required to probably give rating for some of the risks. So, so in certain instances, you're not just required to just list risks, and sometimes even when you list risks, sometimes I find it very irresponsible as a proposal writer, because when you list the risks, now what happens after that? We actually need to be able to see that you have listed the risks and you have actually gone a further step of assessing those risks, and that's basically simply what we actually need to be able to do so that we can get the rating for some of those risks. And so ideally what we normally do when it comes to the rating of the risks, there are basically two factors that we actually consider in risk management. There are basically two critical factors that we need to actually be able to use so that we can be able to do risk rating very well. One of the factors is what we call risk probability, and the second factor is what we call risk impact. So those are the two things that we actually need to be able to use to rate our risks as either low, medium, or high priority. And basically, of course, when you talk about probability, you know that probability will be between 0 to 100% or between 0 to 1. And so there we are talking about how likely is the risk likely to happen. And so if a risk has a higher likelihood of happening, then the score goes higher. Then again, also, if the risk if it actually happens, if it has a higher cost impact, then still its rating will also go high. And that's why we are able to indicate the whole issue of risk rating, so that we are able to say, maybe if a risk scores this particular score, then we will categorize it as a low risk. If it is going to score this based on its probability and impact, then it's going to be, it is actually going to be listed as a middle priority risk. If it is scores this, then it will be categorized as a higher priority risk. So risk rating comes in that, and it's always a responsible proposal writer who does not just identify the risks, but goes further to assess the rating of the risks, so that you can be able also to say these are the management options or management strategies for responding to those risks if they actually happen. And so basically that's what we normally do. Isaac, I hope I've responded to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you have responded to me.
Okay, wonderful. So that's a good question to always think about so that you can address risks very categorically. I think, Beatrice, your microphone is on, so I thought you had a question.
Yeah, mine is a quick one, and thank you very much for the interesting session. I'm particularly interested in the development of the logical framework, and you did mention that if we are interested, we can join in the next probably training to get hands-on in the training. But I just wanted to find out whether it's possible for you to share with us probably a slide on how a logical framework looks like.
Yeah, definitely I will be able to do that. So part of the notes that I will send, I will be able to actually share with you the structure of the logical framework and an example to be able to see how it is actually populated. And so I will be able to do that for the logical framework and also for the theory of change, so that you'll actually be able to get that from your notes. But I think soon we should let you know when we have a webinar on the same, or probably when some of you join us for our courses. I can assure you that's something that we cover in great detail, as it's very, very critical in projects.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Beatrice, as well. Then we have also Kofi. Kofi, you had a question?
Yeah, hello, Stephen.
Yes, yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I've really learned a lot from this presentation. Please, I want to know how Excel Gantt charts are different from MS projects. Because the MS project, we couldn't go through it because we don't have, you said there isn't enough time for that. So I want to know a little bit if they are two different things altogether or they are closely related and any of them can be useful for whatever you want to do whenever you are putting up a proposal.
Okay. So Kofi, as I said earlier on, reason why we go into Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Project to create Gantt charts is because of the very specific reason why we said that donors want to see the extent of how seriously we take planning for our projects, and it always creates an impression that we are very detailed in terms of our planning. That's why we will always consider to use a well-formatted Gantt chart. And one of the questions that you're asking about whether it is important to be able to, whether it is important to actually, why you need to be able to use the Microsoft project Gantt chart, which is different from the Microsoft Excel Gantt chart. Remember, in Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Excel is not a project planning tool. So if you create a Gantt chart in it, it means you yourself have to format the Gantt chart so that it looks presentable. But when you come to Microsoft Project, Microsoft Project is a planning tool, and so it is already formatted. So in Microsoft Project, you find it is actually formatted. So all you do is to enter your details and produce the Gantt chart, and then copy your Gantt chart into the proposal, and that's the difference between the two. So in Excel, you have you're the one to format the way you want to format. But Microsoft Project is standard. It doesn't require you to format. The Gantt chart is already presented for you, and it is presented in a very wonderful format that is industry standard. That is basically what a lot of donors would expect, and you will not have any challenge being able to share a Gantt chart at all. So that's the reason, Kofi, why we are able to prefer Gantt charts in MS Project than in MS Excel.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. You're welcome, Kofi, and thank you for that question as well. And I don't know whether there's somebody else who has a challenge as well in terms of proposal writing and fundraising. I think if it is possible, somebody can be able to share some of, also if you have a specific challenge in proposal writing and also fundraising, I think you can also be able to share. But I'm seeing Suki, you have a question, maybe. I
yes,
know
I
my
do.
time is
it's just a very quick question, very brief.
But Mark, you can allow me to take Suki's question?
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah,
okay,
it's very brief.
Thank
it's
you.
very brief, Stephen. I've noticed, I mean, some of our projects, we've been looking at the 5 capitals, the environmental and financial and all those things. Where do they fit in proposals, or is that an additional aspect of information?
Okay, so basically where you look at the issue of the analysis that we normally do in terms of economic analysis, the environmental analysis, There are basically two areas where we try to consider that particular aspect. Is like when you're able to look at the context for your project, and so you want to be able to review the context for your project, and that we normally want to be able to do what we call a pestle analysis, where we need to be able to look at the political context, the economic context, the social context. Also, we also want to be able to look at the technological context and also the legal context. And sometimes that analysis is something that we can always do as part of the background and contextual analysis of our project, so that we can make sure that our project basically addresses some of the key problems in some of those areas as much as possible. So that will be able to come in as part of your background and contextual analysis of the project. And again, also some other place where we look at those components is where when we want to be able to do a project feasibility study. So sometimes you will prepare a proposal, but actually the donors want you to be able to do a feasibility study into whether the project is actually implementable. And so you still also be able to review those components as well in the feasibility study. So those are two areas where we can find the use of those specific components. And
Thank you.
I hope I have been clear. Okay, welcome. So I think at this point, I just want to be able to hand over to Mark because there's also that other part of the session. And let me say that in case we didn't address your questions, I think you can always be able to write, and some of those questions will be forwarded to us, and we can always be able to write a response on them. So do not worry about that. But in the interest of time, let's just be able to go to the next component as well. So Mark, please go ahead.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for attending. I just have 2 or 3 announcements, then I will call in my colleague Irene to just close. Number 1, I would like to thank our facilitators for what they have done today. And this bridging course is something that we are very keen about because the times are very difficult and we cannot go for trainings, we cannot do much because of this COVID, but because we have this opportunity to be able to provide this training this way, I think this is very commendable. So I really thank all our facilitators. I'd like also to thank the technical teams, both in Europe and in Africa, for the support that they're giving us to be able to put this together and be able to deliver. The issue around certificates, allow me to announce that we will use the names that you registered with, but in the event that the name is different or you may want to re-evaluate that, please write to us immediately because the process is underway and we'll be concluding that on Friday. And after that, you'll be able to receive your certificate latest close of business on Friday this week. So please do not waste time. Otherwise, you may be locked out. You may be aware that we were giving out certificates and a donor directory. A donor directory and certificate will come your way for now. And then lastly, sorry, let me just say that you may know that we were charging $50 for the certificates, the handling and the directory, and 60 euros for the same. Okay. Sorry, I've just been told it's $60 and 50 euros for the same. So by Friday, we shall have sent you your certificates. Please, if you're going to change your name or the order or your name, please let us know as immediately as possible. We are hoping that we're going to have another bridging course This time, most likely it will be on M&D, outcome harvesting and outcome mapping, and we'll provide a free tool to come along with it. And the next one will be in WASH and any other topic or issue, but we'll let you know as time goes. We would like you also to reach out to your colleagues, probably who may want to attend. Today, I am particularly very happy because a lot of us were able to attend. Some were reaching out up to this morning. I know Professor Suki was just signing up this morning to be able to attend. So we congratulate you so much for those who have come on board.